Good evening. Welcome to our April 25th, 2017 Iowa City Community School District School Board meeting. I would like to thank our audience here and at home for viewing our meeting tonight. I'm Latasha Deloach, and I call this meeting to order. I would like to introduce our staff and board members, starting to my right with our Superintendent Steve Murley, Lori Rutland, Lori Rutland, Phil Hemingway, Brian Kersling, what's your name? Chris Lynch, Paul Ressler, Chris Levick, and our recording secretary, Kim Colvin. The public is reminded if they wish to speak, they need to complete a speaker form that's located in the hallway and turn it in to Kim. During community comment, persons may speak to the board about topics relevant to the district. All community comment directed at non-agenda items and agenda items shall take place at the beginning of the meeting during the community comment section of the agenda.
And just to let you know, I will be here for the whole meeting, and Vice President Deloach is going to chair tonight, you can probably tell. And really, we're just practicing tonight, so that's just FYI for your information. With that.
At this time, we would like to have community comment, starting with... sorry. Thank you for your interest in our Iowa City Community School District and for your willingness to share comments. You are recommended to give your name, address, and topic on which you would like to speak. During community comment, persons may speak to the board about topics relevant to the district. All community comment directed at non-agenda items and agenda items shall take place at the beginning of the meeting and shall be limited to 4 minutes per speaker. The initial community comment period shall be limited to 1 hour. Remaining community comment, to the extent necessary, shall take place at the end of the meeting. To the extent you are commenting on items not on our posted agenda, the board may ask follow-up questions of speakers, but is prohibited by the Iowa Open Meetings Law from responding to questions from speakers or from engaging in substantive discussions regarding non-agenda items. First up, we have Albert Jagnow, and after will be Liz Ernest. Thanks. Yep, come on up.
Hi, my name is Albert Jagnow. I'm from Coralville. My daughter Marissa is in Coralville Central, and she's also in the before and after school program. I'd just like to make a few comments on your proposed agreement between the Iowa City School Districts and the before and after school program. So to be short, specifically, I have kind of two major objections to the proposed agreement. The first is on requiring the before and after school programs to provide additional academic curriculum. So I feel like school is a very long time for kids, especially at that age, and having them sit through a structured activity and then give them additional academic curriculum is kind of expecting a little too much of them, I feel. And also there's significant research that shows that children should have a certain amount of time just to play. Like there's a lot of research that shows that unstructured activities lead to cognitive development just as well as structured activities. And then my second comment is on the requirement for holding spots open for emergency cases. So Coralville Central, I believe it's 4 spots, and the program is 65 students total. So that program is often waitlisted, meaning that if you hold 4 spots open, there are very likely families who would not get into that program every year. So that's a concern for those people who would get bumped out of the program, as well as the financial burden to the people who are in the program if those spots aren't taken, because it would up the financial burden on the program, as the Iowa City School District appears to not be offering any compensation to hold those spots open. So those are my two major concerns. Thank you for your consideration on my input.
Thanks.
Yeah, I just have one question. The ages, when you're talking about the curriculum, what are the ages of the students involved?
Well, I would say for elementary school, I feel like, you know, anything from kindergarten through probably like 4th grade, you know, that's kind of a time where, I mean, I see what my daughter's doing in school today, and it's a lot more than what I did when I was in kindergarten. Right. So I feel like that's already an additional burden we've kind of placed on children at this age. So continuing to say, hey, now that you're spending an extra hour and a half at school, we're going to make you do more work. So
it's kindergartners through
yeah,
fourth grade.
I'd say for the elementary programs, right? That would be, I think they should have some time to play and relax after school.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Up is Liz. Following will be Thomas Agrin.
Hi, my name is Liz. I am the director at Longfellow Key Before and After School program. Thank you for hearing our concerns today. Regarding the interagency agreement, myself and several other directors ask that you do not vote on this topic this evening. We received the newest version of the draft yesterday, Monday, April 24th at 4:33 p.m. So we have not had enough time to thoroughly go through the new contract ourselves and then with our parent board members. So we just ask that we are given more time to review, revise, and come to an agreement. Thank you.
Thanks. Next up is Thomas Agrin, and following will be Jamie Johnson.
I understand I can hand these out. Thank you so much. Thank you. I'm a little under the weather, so excuse my voice holds up.
Okay.
My name's Thomas Agrin. I live in the North Side neighborhood on Van Buren Street, very close to Horace Mann Elementary. And I'd like to talk briefly about the school with you guys tonight. And I come to you wearing a whole rack of hats that I have in the community. I'm the Historic Preservation Commission representative for the North Side neighborhood for the city of Iowa City. I also help organize the North Side Neighborhood Association. I'm a parent of a future Horace Mann student, and I can also look out my daughter's window and see and hear the school from her room. The initial list of proposed site plans for Horace Mann that we saw as a community were concerning to me on many levels, to say the least. But that said, I'm also feeling optimistic, having seen the most recent plans, including option H2. I think that as we all have reflected on those initial plans, we are making some really strong strides towards being on the same page, and that makes me feel really good. So, a small group of us in the neighborhood, including parents and teachers and those just with a general love for the school and the neighborhood, have been working on developing another option that we think creates a great new school that harmonizes with the neighborhood, and we are calling that plan by the catchy name of Option Z. The plan is designed around some core priorities. The first would be creating the best possible environment for our kids, a site plan that is sensitive to the rhythms and assets of the neighborhood, and also one that creates the least friction amongst all of the warring parties here for implementation. Horace Mann's an urban school on a very small site, as we all know, and we don't have a lot of space to work with, so I think it makes sense to design around those priorities rather than around vehicle storage, which is how the initial options feel to a lot of us in the neighborhood. The constraints of a small space should encourage us to think creatively, and not to mention, I think that the plan that we have been working on as a community might even save money, which I know is something that as we head into a bond is something that we can all agree on, at the very least, is a good thing. So, lastly, 2 years ago, on May 18th, Horace Mann Elementary was proudly designated by the district and the city as a blue zone school. So not only do I think that the option Z that we're proposing effectively solves a lot of the challenges we've been working with the small piece of real estate that we have, mostly by thinking outside of the box, literally, in terms of parking and parking lots. But also, that plan that we're working on really closely aligns with the priorities and goals that you have established for this school. And indeed, the city is looking at the whole of Northside for representing. So it's a really wonderful moment, I think, for the school district and the city, everyone to work together and lead by example for the next 50-year investment that we make in the schools and in our community. So I handed out a big, thick piece of paper that I hope you hang on to for a little bit, and I hope that you can visit with it during your work session tonight. I've also included my own personal contact information. If I could answer any questions or comments or concerns that you have, that's what it's there for. So thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Tom. Jamie?
Can I ask a quick question? Would you be able to put that in electronic form for us?
Absolutely.
Email it to
How
the
would
board.
you like to all members?
Board
of
at
the board?
iowacitieschools.org would be great.
You bet. I'll do it
Thank you.
tonight.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Jamie, and then Tim Carey. I'm going to go with Carey.
Hello, my name is Jamie Johnson, and I come to you tonight not only as a member of the board of Coralville Central, but a student through the Iowa City School Districts. Tammy started at Central Cares when I was in second grade. I have worked at Central Cares, and now my child goes to Central Cares. So the interagency agreement that you have proposed is against a lot of what we feel is important. However, it was a very commendable effort. We respectfully request that you do not vote on this interagency agreement tonight. As recently and previously explained, our directors received it at 4:32 yesterday afternoon, not giving us enough time to bring it to our board, to have recommendations or revisions. Some of the requirements could cause 20-year programs to be financially unstable for a period of time. We are a small nonprofit, and our budget cannot withstand a prolonged revenue drop if families do not utilize available spaces in emergency situations. Our program has never turned away a child and never intends to turn away a child. We have always found legal and creative ways to serve them, regardless of our circumstances or theirs. Thirdly, we are greatly concerned that if our program is required to hold spots or a wait list, our wait list will increase. Some of these families could be waitlisted, are already struggling themselves, and the loss of childhood care could put their employment in jeopardy. Please allow us all the time to review the new draft of the interagency agreement. Thank you.
Thanks, Jamie. Tim? Up next will be Melissa. I'm sorry, Melissa Holster. Yeah.
All right. Good evening. My name is Tim Cardy, and I'm here to voice my support for the general obligation bond. I'm a parent of 2 future students of the Iowa City Community Schools. I work for the Chamber of Commerce, and I'm a member of One Community, One Bond. As a parent, one of the reasons my wife and I chose to live in Iowa City was because of the community support for education. Iowa City's public schools are among some of the best in the state, but recently, the consistent increase in students has put a strain on the aging infrastructure. Passage of the GO bond not only reaffirms our community's support for education, but cements our support for our children's learning environments and our teachers' working environments. I've heard from parents who have children who are about to graduate, who've never eaten in their high school cafeteria because it's too full, so they eat in the hallways, or who have never gone to a school with air conditioning. This isn't just about my children, this is about all children and our next generation entering the workforce. Don't we want to give them every opportunity to succeed? More and more, we haven't been able to trust Des Moines or Washington to help us with these problems. This bond is an opportunity for us as a community to take ownership of our children's learning environments and support them with our vote. For me, as a member of the business community, it's critical to equip all of our schools with 21st century learning environments. Otherwise, we run the risk of losing potential new employees for our great jobs and new businesses deciding to open their doors elsewhere. I've watched games in boiling hot gyms, read to students in overcrowded classrooms, and watched students walking to and from temporary classrooms in awful weather. I think we have a chance to be better than this and need to support the bond with our vote. Thanks.
Thanks, Tim. Next up is Melissa, and up next will be Lori Nash.
Hi, my name is Melissa Hostetler. I am currently the 21st Century Coordinator at Lucas Elementary. I have also served as the Director of the BASP at Grant Wood Elementary. I've also been in a number of programs after school through the 4-H on Wheels program. And I'm here to talk about the after BASP's update for the board. I'm really excited about the update. I think there's been a lot of hard work that has gone into it, both with directors, DHS, and the school district. And I'm especially excited to serve families who haven't had access to these programs traditionally in the past. I have had homeless students who have asked to take snack home from programs for me because they didn't have enough food at night. I've had students who I've had to turn away because their parents were unemployed, they'd lost their job, they weren't able to qualify for child care assistance, and they deserve to be in program everyone deserves to have access to the programs that we have in our buildings. And so I'm excited about the work that we've been doing in order to ensure that access. Thank you.
Thanks, Melissa. Up next is Lori Nash and then Jen Greer.
Hi, I'm Lori Nash. I live on 3rd Avenue in Iowa City. I have 2 students in the district, a sophomore and a 4th grader. And I'm also a member of CDAC, so I'm on that committee. Personally, I've had students attend 2 different before and after school programs, so it's been, we kind of have a little bit more experience maybe than some. The first thing I'd like to talk about is that an academic curriculum is not required. So this contract, this interagency agreement, doesn't say anything about an academic curriculum. What it says is that the before and after school programs will align their program goals with one or more of the district's goals. And those goals include increasing students proficient in math, increasing students proficient in reading, and improving educational experiences for all children through culturally inclusive and responsive environments. It seems as if that's not a curriculum, those are activities. A cooking activity is math. Playing a card game is math. Reading a book is language. Those types of activities can continue to happen and still make progress towards these goals. The district has a high mobility rate in some of the buildings, not every building, but some of them. And I know that it can be really challenging for families, especially if they come to our district after the beginning of the school year and try to find care. And we find that often some of our families who have lower incomes tend to be more mobile. They're renting, so their housing might not be stable. They might be moving from one school in the district to another. And so I think that the change in the waitlist policy was a huge benefit for families so that you don't have to get on the list 3 years ahead of time in order to get a kid in. We sat on a list for 2 years ourselves, so I know how that can be. But I think that that's a huge step forward, but I also think that when programs are full, it's really hard. And most of the programs are being asked to set aside one slot. I think that this is very important to help us ensure some continuity. As a parent, I could advocate for the before and after school programs that my children attended. Like, I can come in here today and tell you the BASP at Hoover is fantastic, wonderful. I recommend it to anyone. My kid had a great experience, but I don't feel that I can speak about the programs at other schools at all. I can't advocate for the BASP system because I don't know anything about the other programs. With the interagency agreement and having some continuity, then I feel more confident to be able to say, you know, I know that all of the programs are addressing this and they're doing this. Not that I think or I've been told, but I know that because that's part of the agreement. And I think that that helps us to advocate for the BASP system as a whole. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next up is Jen. After that is Charlie Easton.
Hi, everybody. My name is Jen Freer, and I live at 1673 Trail in North Liberty. Sorry, let me speak into the microphone. Tonight I'm here to voice my support for the GEO bond, and as you know, the vote will be on Tuesday, September 12th. I've served on countless committees and given feedback at roundtables, spoke at listening posts, attended the Hotel Vitro meeting as well, and I want to thank each of you for serving as a school board seat, or as I call it, the hot seat in this community. My husband and I have 3 sons, and one is a recent graduate and attends the University of Iowa. He's a graduate of West High. Our middle son is a junior at West, and our youngest is a 7th grader at North Central. And he'll be attending Liberty in the fall of 2018. Can't wait. I'm here tonight as a member of the One Community, One Bond. We formed this committee to bring parents, business leaders, community members, students from all over the district to advocate for the support for the GEO bond. As a parent and community member, I support the bond because of the improvements of safety and security in our public schools, and I have 15 years as a Penn Elementary parent and Penn received a huge, large renovation and addition in 2014-2015. So I'm grateful that Penn is now a great learning space, which is also a safe place for my neighbor kids. Not only did we get security upgrades, a new library, a new gym, 8 classroom addition at Penn, our students and teachers now have air conditioning, thank God, throughout the whole building. That made a positive difference in my youngest, who was very exhausted after a hot day of school because it wasn't quite hot enough to leave, but it was still humid and hot, long story short. According to the FMP, Facilities Master Plan, West will be renovated with full air conditioning, and then right now it's only at 40% air conditioning. By the way, City is at 47%, not that I'm keeping track. And we'll replace several permanently fogged and leaky windows that are now almost 50 years old at West. If the GEO bond passes in September, there won't be a third classroom at West High with an 80+ temperature and 36 kids learning pre-calculus. This is what my middle son had during the hot days that weren't hot enough to release kids. Let's have air conditioning for every student in the district. The projects in the FMP will be used for air conditioning to all schools and will improve security and ADA accessibility throughout the district. So, we need more seats in the north. Land for a new elementary has been purchased. We have more to do with safety and security to address across the district, including our 2 aging high schools, West and City, plus a new gym at Tate, which is awesome, which they don't have yet. They don't have a gym. So we have more additions and renovations we need across the district, and we need a permanent outdoor athletic facilities at Liberty High in 2 years. But only we can do that if we say yes to the GEO bond on September 12th. By the way, we need 60% of those who vote to vote yes. I've been involved with the tracking of school board decisions since 2010. That's a long time. I'm very happy to know that what we've done so far, but I'm not yet satisfied because we have more to do. By the way, thanks for creating the FMP. Not many districts have a large plan with so much community input. We've had, I think, at least 1,500 people that have input on that. Thank you for listening to all of us. Thank you for your support on the FMP, the safety and security, and more seats in our schools and more elbow room in our classrooms. Thank you.
Yeah. Charlie, up next will be Jesse Witherall.
Good evening. My name is Charlie Eastham. I live at 953 Canton Street. I want to talk about very briefly about the before and after school program. I'm also a member of the Equity Advisory Committee, and so I'm here tonight as a member of that committee. I'm not speaking for the committee. I'd just like to point out to the board that the Longfellow Key is one of the before and after school programs. My wife and I, along with 3 or 4 other parents, actually started the Longfellow Key back when our kids were in grade school. They're much older now. So I'm really happy to see the key is still in operation. I can't remember why we named it the Longfellow Key. It had something to do with some bright idea. We noticed that the interagency agreement particularly focuses on equity issues and the before and after school programs, and I personally think that's a major step forward that is appropriate to be taking now. That requires reporting from the programs about the demographics on their boards, as well as the students who are who are participating in the programs. And I think those are good things to do. We had some questions, I think, that the Equity Advisory Committee may want to take a look at our next meeting, which is before you're going to vote on this, I think in May, about the accessibility of some before and after school programming for certain kids with disabilities. But that's something that I think we'll be able to consider carefully as we go forward with this. So basically, I really commend the board and the administration for making these steps and hope you'll approve it. Thanks.
Thanks, Charlie. Jesse, and up next will be Jackie Biker.
Hi. Members of the board, my name is Jessie Witherell, 1241 East Burlington Street. I am here both as a parent of a child with special needs and as a member of the Equity Advisory Committee. In reviewing the proposed BASP interagency agreement, I have some concerns that there's really not a lot of language that addresses improving accessibility specifically for children who have special needs. Many parents with children who have disabilities would like to take part in after-school programming, but aren't able to do so because either staff isn't fully trained to support them or because it's simply too expensive to pay both the cost of tuition and privately hire support staff for your child. I've had many parents talk to me about this, about how they wish that it was more accessible. And so I think it's up to us as a district to try to do all we can to open that up to all students. Finding adequate childcare for children with special needs is something that is desperately needed in our community. Many parents, including myself, have not been able to be fully employed because there's nowhere affordable for our kids to go after school. By creating extra financial burden for some parents and not others, I'm afraid we may accidentally create an issue of inequality instead of address it. That being said, I think that the BASP agreement is awesome. There's a lot of great things in it. There's a lot of proposed collaboration for grant opportunities, help with child care assistance, tuition fee waivers for children who receive free and reduced lunch, along with many other things, and that's great. But I would really like to see some language that is specifically written for improving accessibility for kids with disabilities. Whether the solution is creating some kind of tuition waiver or a scholarship or trying to do something to help them afford extra support staff, that would be something nice to see. We will be talking about this at the next Equity Advisory Committee, so we might have some recommendations to bring for the board. So thank you for your time.
Thanks, Jesse. Jackie? Up next will be Anthony Branch.
Hi, my name is Jackie Biger, and I live at 519 North Johnson Street in Iowa City, and my house is directly adjacent to North Market Square Park. And I just wanted to talk about the Horace Mann project this evening. I wanted to say how exciting it is that we're at the cusp where we're talking about an addition for Horace Mann, and I think the whole neighborhood is very excited about the possibilities, but we do want to make sure that the integrity of the park and the open play space is kept there. I was excited on the latest H2 proposal that the green space was left, an open green space on the park. I think open, unstructured play, as was spoken to earlier, is one of the greatest assets we can give our kids in our community. It's also very much an open, unstructured play yard for everybody in Iowa City. Lots and lots of people use that space. I can attest to it from my porch. I watch people play there all the time. So I just hope that maybe there can be some creative thinking for parking, because I think if we were to choose more play space for kids or a bigger parking lot, that hopefully we would choose offering more play space and thinking of assigning parking within walking distance that seems reasonable. I know the staff members at the high schools have to walk quite a distance to get to the school, and I don't think it's that crazy to ask people to walk a block to get to work. People do that all the time in Iowa City, especially in an urban setting. So thank you for your time. I'll get back to my yelling toddler.
So, Anthony? Up next will be Shannon Patrick.
My name is Anthony Branch, and I'm Youth Program Director at Neighborhood Centers of Johnson County. In review of the interagency agreement for the after-school programs, I'd like to commend the team of folks who put together the interagency agreement and the efforts it makes to address the equitable access for underserved and vulnerable populations, and that we continue to work towards making sure that all of our students, regardless of socioeconomic status, that they have a place in the programs that are in our schools and feel welcomed in those programs. Thank you.
Thanks, Tony. Up next is Shannon Patrick, and then Adam Ralston.
Evening, folks. I'm going to be the odd one out, and I'm going to talk about the technology proposal. This is the one laptop in every backpack proposal, which so far I haven't heard about. I'm, as I said, Shannon Patrick. I have two in Alexander, and have a couple different things to say about this one. Generally speaking, I'm not in favor of this one for different reasons. First off, I know some of you have been quite particular over the past about speaking about the facilities master's plan and all the input that went into it. So having said that, anything that pulls out of that same funding source for a technology initiative, I don't take that very well, particularly on the cusp of a new bonding vote. Second, I'm also concerned that the school district might not have the policies in place to support this, so you're putting the cart before the horse. Specifically, if you're sending laptops home with everyone, have you thought through, if this is the only laptop in the home, what happens if somebody other than the student uses it? What happens if the student or somebody else in the home uses it for something they're not supposed to use it for? If this is supposed to address inequality, what happens if the student brings it home, they don't have home internet access? If you are on the elementary level, if you're increasing the amount of technology, have you allocated funding towards additional training? Since teachers aren't going to automatically know how to beneficially use twice as many computers per child. Additionally, I know that part of that is also making so that you replace computers more often. Now, if this were the 1990s, I'd be right on board with that and say, well, yeah, they're obsolete in 4 years. As is, I'm an analyst, I'm an IT professional, and I telecommuted on a 5- and 6-year-old computer. So the idea that you need to shuffle these out at 4 years seems peculiar to me and maybe not the best use of funds. So in short, unless there's something that is some clear demonstrable benefit that you expect to get, bring this up, again, particularly on the cusp of that facilities vote, where the last time I voted for it, I wanted my kids to have air conditioning. They were at Twain at the time and roasting in the summer. So that's where I think this money should go, is having it so that we don't have to have hot days, not sending laptops home with everybody for no obvious reason to me. Thank you. And thank you for your blog.
Thanks. Adam?
Hi, I'm Adam Ralston, 307 College Court. I'm here to speak about the BASP interagency agreement. First of all, Wally, thank you for founding that. I didn't realize you had done that. The Longfellow program is where my child currently attends. It's been a wildly successful program since the mid-1980s, a very long and successful run. Parents are in full support of the program and love it. That being said, the agreement itself is full of issues. I think the board was probably given a Q&A that was written by the district as some background information. Also has a lot of issues with that. One example I'll give is that it states that the open spots that the BASPs are required to keep open will be funded by the district. They've set aside money. And while that is true, the district has said they have set aside money, it's not nearly enough to actually cover that amount. So we have not gotten an answer as to how that shortfall will be funded and how the BASPs will actually be able to stay afloat if the interagency agreement is pushed through. Also, I'll just mention that given the makeup of how the BASPs work, most of the parents have no idea that this is going on, that's being discussed, what it's about, anything about it. I do fear that if this is pushed through, everything gets put in place, that there will be a tremendous number of parents that will be irate at the actual outcome. And there's no way to gauge that right now, and I admit that. I fear that this will be pushed through, that you'll be asked to sign it, sure, rubber stamp sign, but that then there will be quite a backlash afterwards. So please just make sure you have all the information. The Q&A, for example, got issues, so it's very one-sided. You've gotten the district side. Be sure, before you sign it, please get the parents and board of the BASP's side as well. Thank you.
Thanks. Next up is Tammy Osterhaus.
Hi, thank you. I'm Tammy Osterhaus. I actually live in Cedar Rapids, but I'm the director at Central Cares in Coralville. As my board member stated, I have actually been there 23 years. I have had many children come and go. I've seen many changes in the way our programs have run over the years. First of all, I want to state the agreement that we've already been dealing with since 2012 when the originals came out, they have the potential to be wonderful. There are so many awesome things in it to help make sure that we are serving students, that people have accessibility, that we have a more concrete, solid partnership with the district. I can tell you from 1995 when I started, Parents started these programs because they needed quality childcare. We all got licensed, 501c3s, all this. They have evolved into just amazing things over the years. I've been to national conferences. A number of us attend national conferences so we can continue learning and bringing awesome stuff back to our children that we serve. I've been here for so long. I've had the gamut of children with physical needs, emotional needs, mental needs, and I've always strived to make sure that they are all treated fairly and equally. So this agreement that's here, it can be awesome. So I don't want any of the board members to think that we're not willing. We are here. We are a voice for our families. We're a voice for our children. We want to make sure that we are doing what's best for them. And with the help of the district, with this agreement, to get training, to get accessibility, that's awesome. But in the agreement, there's phrasing and language that we want clarification on. We're not unwilling to help these children who are in emergency situations. I've had my SFA come to me and say, hey, we have a child that would really benefit from your program. What can we do? And I find a way. And we all find a way. We know the kids in our buildings need us, and that's why we're here. None of us got into the field of childcare for the money. It's because we love kids. Am I right? We love kids. We have a passion for kids. We want to see them grow into well-rounded adults. So the agreement, albeit wonderful in intent, we just want language to clarify. We're small nonprofits. We're not opposed to holding spaces, but we want some explanation as to, we can't force parents to use it if they don't feel they need it. We may have a number of families that could benefit that are in these emergency situations, but if they feel that I'm speculating, but if it's a pride thing, if it's we can do this thing, I can't make them come after school. If they want to come, awesome. I will find a spot. I will make sure this is the best experience for their child. So we just want that clarification of some of the language to make sure that we're not all cookie cutter, and we all deserve the chance to show. We would love it if board members, CDAC members, anybody that wants to come and observe, see what we are about and see what we do, please email us, contact us. We would be happy to see we would be happy for you to see what we are about. Thank you.
Thanks, Tammy. That concludes, I don't have any more community comments. That concludes community comments. We're now moving to our district business with our consent agenda. Is there any items need to be pulled?
I'd like to pull 4, 10, 12, and 13.
I'd like to pull number 9.
Now, Director Hemingway, it's a board norm to, if you want to pull personnel, to inform the president ahead of time.
Excuse me?
It's a board norm to for a board member to request to pull personnel to inform the board president ahead of time.
Is it a board norm to inform us and have an exempt session before we settle the exempt groups? Because we didn't have one.
Again, if you want to pull it, all you had to do was give me a call, right?
Well, this is something that I looked at, and I said we hadn't had a meeting like we did last year, and I agree with Director Liebig that if we do approve it without discussion, we're breaking our protocol of the past.
I'm pulling it.
Okay.
And I understand the topic. Now, we all understand we need to be sensitive to pulling personnel.
I understand.
And I think we all know what we're going to talk.
And if you want me to
Right.
be more specific with it, I can be. Let me just.
It's fine. I think we all
No,
understand what we're talking about.
And it would just be, if you wanted to pull everything, or I say approve everything except
Let's just-
the meet and confer.
Let's just agree on number 4, we're just going to talk meet and confer, right?
Right.
Yeah, all right, we're good.
So we're just pulling just the meet and confer with number 4?
We can't, we got to pull the whole
We have to
thing.
pull the
but-
whole thing.
I think. But
All right.
Could you just clarify the list of what was pulled?
yeah,
I have a 4, 9, 10, 12, and 13. Am I missing any numbers? Is there a motion?
I move that we approve the consent agenda items absent items 4, 9, 10, 12, and 13 as requested.
There's a second?
Second.
Okay. All right, sorry. Okay, now we're going to our, do we have the,
check with Phil on the bills, and then we'll tell Kim ready to
oh
vote.
yeah. How's the bills, Phil?
Yeah, the bills, there were some big ones on a couple of pages. We had some big stuff. There's an ongoing saga with the chiller in this building, which ought to give us some pause with the AC of the district. But all the questions that I had were answered. Again, hopefully sometime we get to a point where we can discuss the spending before it's already spent.
I just, if I can add, there was one major question that I had in reviewing the bills that was answered by Leslie fairly quickly. It was a general fund expenditure for some, what appeared to be facility work, but it's asbestos abatement, which we get reimbursed for by the state, because we're required to remove the asbestos if we find it. Just didn't look like a normal general fund expenditure, but it is.
Okay. Are we ready to vote?
Online voting is open. All votes have been cast and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
Okay, we'll now go into our board work. Was there any questions or concerns, or do we just want to go ahead and just do a motion for the approval of the general obligation bond language? And then we can have discussion.
The general obligation bond language as presented in the packet.
I second that.
Discussion?
I'll just say quickly what I said last week. I like the update that we saw kind of very late before the last meeting that made the proposed language more detailed, got clearer on the actions we're going to take, put the order of the renovations in place. So I thought those were great improvements. It's always a balance between following legal requirements and legal advice versus the level of detail. And of course, keeping all the language on the ballot is a constraint. So this tried to find a balance where all the language would stay on the ballot. So I'm very supportive of the language. I like the updates. I think this is one of those things that maybe it's never perfect, but this is very good, and I think it gets to the objective. And I think everybody knows where I'm at with the facilities master plan. I expect that we execute the 10-year plan as we've agreed, and that's what I'd expect would happen over the next 6 years.
I've got just a couple in the middle of the paragraph when it's going, and I guess it's one long sentence, but art, music, pre-kindergarten, science by constructing, furnishing, and equipping a new building. The a new building, can we be more specific on the a new building, or where, or?
Well, it does say new elementary school construction in North Liberty.
That's what we're referring to by that a new building.
It's a group of 3 things:
Yeah.
equipping a new building, constructing additions to and/or remodeling, repairing, and improving school buildings. It's a group.
No, I understand, but
There's been a lot of discussion about just what it commits us to and what it doesn't commit us to if this bond passes. We earlier in the year heard some comments being made that if the bond passes, it would restore the cuts that were made to orchestra, foreign language, etc. Is it accurate to say that it will restore the cuts that we've made to programming?
You're talking apples and oranges.
Yeah, what are we even talking about?
That's exactly what my reaction was to the comment. I mean, it's not accurate to say that, is it, Steve?
No, it's not.
Is it?
No,
And we also,
there we go. No, it's not. We never discussed programming. This is a facilities bond.
Sure. We also had a community commenter who said that passage of the bond would be, quote, a guarantee of no more school closures. Is it a guarantee of no more school closures?
This is, from that standpoint, that's a board action. So, no, it's not a guarantee of anything in the future from a school closure standpoint.
Sure. You know, there were questions being asked about what flexibility the board would have to change the projects in the plan. So, for example, if they, you know, decided not to put a gym on one of the buildings that we're currently planning to put a gym on, would that violate any kind of obligation that we're under once the bond is passed?
No, it's my understanding that the intent is to follow the facilities master plan. If the board were to decide to determine that there was a change to the facilities master plan, then the board would have the latitude to do that.
Okay.
Craig, can I ask a quick question on the tail of that? Since there's 4 planned bond sales within this, within our general obligation bond language, once the bond sale occurs, specific projects are listed with each of those 4 bond sales. You cannot deviate from that, correct?
Extraordinarily, without an extraordinary extenuating circumstance. For instance, you're scheduled to remodel an elementary building and a tornado takes it out. It would probably be impractical for you to move forward with that portion of the bond, and you probably have to reconsider what you wanted to do with that portion of the bond. So, but otherwise, you need to follow through with the projects that you have listed on your ballot question. In every opinion we've got on this, it moves closer and closer to it's more locked in than not locked in.
Correct.
Because there's an implicit promise, and you basically have to demonstrate you're not breaking that promise.
Be correct.
You know, that's in the language.
I guess the point I've been making to people is, to some extent, you're going to have to rely on your political remedies, you know, appealing to the existing board, voting out board members, voting in board members, rather than legal remedies, because it doesn't sound like that, you know, again, once the bonds are issued, I understand that's a different story, but some of the bonds aren't going to be issued for years, right? I mean, the passage of the bond proposal sounds like there's still quite a bit of flexibility.
Well,
That's why it's a little, I mean, it's a little confusing to me why on the FAQ right now it says the GO bond locks in the plan. I'm not sure what that means.
Well, what it clearly says is that you can't spend money on things that aren't in the GO bond language.
Right, but the GO bond language is broad enough that an awful lot of things would qualify.
Well, sure, but if you were so specific that you were inflexible 3 years out or 4 years out, then that would be equally, if not more, ridiculous.
I'm with you. I mean, personally, if it were locking us into everything that's listed in the facilities master plan, I'd be more reluctant to support it, because I think some of those projects aren't actually defensible 6 years out. But I just think we need to make sure that we're giving people consistent answers to the question.
And on the 4 bond sales, there's the very last bonds that are purchased. If they are not paid off early, what would be the last year that they would, the last maturing year of that final group of bonds that are purchased?
I think I provided that information to you a couple of times, and just from memory, it's around 2042, somewhere in there.
I'd like to make a comment, I guess. I'm voting in support of this language. I know it's not perfect in everybody's eyes, but I'm not a rubber stamp. I'm a person, and I have my own opinion. And I'm doing this because this district needs to come together, hold the board accountable for carrying out what we've already voted to approve. There'll be 4 of us at least, 5, I don't know, if Brian or Chris is going to run again or not, but there'll be at least 4 of us here that are going to be approving projects for the next 2 years at least, if this is passed. And I have not strayed since I ran for board the first time in saying that I fully supported this facility master plan and the projects that were on there. Have we made changes as we've gone on? Yes. Are there things that we need to do past this bond? Yes. You know, what what I hear when I go out to the schools across the district and present the information on this is I walk away with a renewed feeling that the bond will pass and this community will finally come together for one need. But by no means am I saying that everything I hear out there is positive. But what gets me each time is the reasons that the people say they don't support the bond has nothing to do with the needs of the kids and the schools and the facilities. It's more with the trust of the staff or the superintendent or the board. And as we know, schools and facilities and kids will be here long past any of us sitting up here besides maybe Kim. I don't know, she's...
He's pretty young.
Yeah, I mean...
She's going to get you for that.
And I have no reason to believe that if we commit to this language that the people on the board will not complete everything that's listed in our facility plan. There's no bait and switch. There's no secret backroom deals. There's no plan to close Shimmick or Lincoln. Rather, we're investing in schools. We're one community, and we really need to come together as a community and believe that the people that you're electing are going to follow the plan as we have already. I mean, we're 4 or 5 years into it, and we've done everything on time, on or under budget. So I would assume that that's going to continue in the future.
I guess there's some need for us to be slightly flexible. I think that's why this is written in this way, as well as it is up to the voting community members that they are questioning the folks who are running for these different offices about, are they going to do what it is that they're saying that they're doing? So at the end of the day, I'm going to be long gone in a couple of years. It's going to be up to the community to hold board members to what they're saying that we're doing. You know, because in a little bit, I'm just going to be one vote in a little box too, you know. So I just think that we have to put forth our best faith effort here and try to do what's best for our kids and staff. And we neglected this. The boards before us, they're going to be mad at me, but they neglected to do some of this. And so it is up to us to turn that around. It ain't pretty. It ain't perfect the way that everyone would want it to be, but we have to keep striving for perfection. Perfection is not something that's a drop in a bucket. It's something that we aspire to. And I said, this is a lot. That's a lot of words. We could have just put like 2 sentences up here and said, vote for this. But there's been some careful consideration and time and effort. And even some of the things that people had, you know, questions about, it was compromised and added. So we're trying to do what's best for kids, for all the kids in our district, not just the ones in our household. So at this point, unless anyone has anything else you want to add?
Yeah, I have just kind of a logistical question. So can you print on the front and the back of the ballot? Or is this all on the front? Do you know? You don't know?
I don't know.
No?
We can ask the county auditor.
Okay. The reason I ask is because this is very long. Like, this is hard for me to read. It's very tiny. And then we also have the candidates that are running. And I'm just a little concerned about the length of this and the fact that people might not turn the ballot over, which either means they won't vote for the bond or they won't vote for candidates. And that didn't occur to me till right now, so I'm sorry I didn't raise it earlier, but I do think that, I hope they have some option for folks that need large print, because folks my age have trouble reading print this small. I'm sorry to say, but I'm older.
Ballot observation, and we can certainly work with Travis and see what their thoughts are and how they're going to structure it. It's entirely up to him, actually, how it appears on the ballot and how it gets put on the ballot. So,
But that's definitely a reason we didn't want to go any longer. So there's definitely conversation about, we don't want to make it any longer, because you do run into these, and there's been some conversation with the auditor's office, but like you say, it would be up to them in the end.
Right.
So if they say this is too long, then
It's possible you could get
We will
part of the
change it.
language. The full language will always be available. It's a question of how it's presented on the ballot.
Well, I went to the auditor's office today and talked with some people there to see if this was some kind of a record for length, and they said no. And in fact, there's supposedly a site where they have multiple bond initiatives or ballot proposals that have been up there, and there have been some that are longer. But if it's a type of a thing where you have to flip it over, that would be a concern.
So I guess I'd just like to make a couple comments because I think the language is critical. I think this is something that you know, has evolved over our work sessions, and I appreciate the work done by our board and by the people working on getting the language correct, get it right, because I think this is in fact very right. It clearly spells out our community commitment to addressing health, safety, and accessibility issues. I'm just going to reiterate some of the things in here because it is a lot of words, like you said, Latasha. It's a messy sentence, but it's a necessary one. It spells out our commitment to air conditioning all of our schools. We are very close. 2019 is all elementaries, 2020 is all junior highs, 2021 is all high schools, and then we never have to talk about air conditioning again. Reducing temporaries, committing to art, music, preschool, science, addressing crowded lunchrooms, gyms, and classrooms. I'm just going to go through this. You know, this affects elementary schools at Lincoln, Mann, New North Liberty Elementary, Shimmick, Wood, Wickham, Garner, Horn, Kirkwood, Borlaug, Alexander, and Lemmy. Say that in one breath. All 3 junior highs, all 3 high schools, and Tate High School finally gets a gymnasium. This is very much not a blank check. I've heard that from some people. It is a very specific check, rather. The language very clearly spells out the last half of our 10-year facility master plan that was derived by our community and thousands of people in 2012 and 2013. To date, following that pathway charted by our community, we have done $155 million worth of projects in the last 3.5 years, all on time, on budget. Ask the people at Alexander, which didn't exist 3 years ago, the people at Twain, Corville Central, Penn, Van Allen, Weber, Lucas Hills, City, High, and Liberty, what that means to their students and teachers, soon Liberty. We're about to start the historic renovation at Longfellow, which is going to challenge our imagination and creativity as what we can do with a 100-year-old building. Our duty as board members is to advocate for the education of the children in our community, whether at the federal, state, or local level. There is very little sign of commitment to public education funding right now at the state and federal level, and this is, I think, how we hold our ground. This is our community's single up or down vote on committing to the one thing entirely within our own control, which is our facilities in our neighborhoods. As Director Ressler said, our buildings do outlast any board or any superintendent, and our growth certainly isn't slowing, so the need is not going away. Rather, it only continues to grow every year. There's a little under 5 months to get out there and inform the public about the facts here, and passing this paragraph clearly spells out the facts. All members of the board, it is our duty to advocate for our students, all of them in every school, to inform the public of facts, and to stand up to those who spread fear or misinformation, to ensure that we can finally move forward as one community supportive of our students' and teachers' needs, and to get us to the point where we can finally focus on education and not facilities. Thank you.
So just as a no vote, I feel like I have a special obligation to say something.
Sure.
Good vote, yes.
What's that?
Good vote, yes.
Well, good, I suppose. You know, I'm somebody who's always voted for school bonds in the past. I supported the RPS in 2013. I don't relish being a no vote on this bond. For me, the dollar amount in taxation is not the issue, though not everybody may be in a position to say that. I believe there are projects in this proposal that are very worthy projects. For example, the Mann renovation that we're going to talk about later, the new elementary school in North Liberty, the addition to North Central Junior High now that we've districted a whole bunch more kids there, the air conditioning projects on our older building, basically the renovations of our older buildings. If that's what the bond was all about, I'd be in favor of it, even though I still have some disagreements with the plan. But the plan as it stands, in my view, commits the district to too many projects that would add capacity to our buildings years out on the timeline, some of them, before we have any clear indication that we'll have enough students to need that new capacity. And all I can say is that the process seems to me to have been distorted by too much concern about catering to the interests of land developers and construction contractors. From the very beginning, when the Facilities Steering Committee had more seats reserved for the Iowa City Area Development Group, the Chamber of Commerce, and the Construction Trades Council than it had for the PTOs, to the initial plan, which sacrificed an existing school in a neighborhood with almost 600 kids within a square mile, while prioritizing a new school in a neighborhood with less than 100 kids within a square mile, and which relied on capacity calculations that were plainly unrealistic and overstated how much new capacity we would need. To a year or two later, when our enrollment projections decreased, and it was the capacity in the central existing neighborhood schools that was cut, to the point where the district appears to have now abandoned any pretense of trying to plan our number of new seats to match our projected number of students. We paid for new enrollment projections, but afterward decided they weren't capturing growth. And if that's not what enrollment projections are for, I don't know what they're for. Right up to the present day, when the board chose a proposal that went beyond just the projects that were clearly needed to including adding capacity to many schools when there's no clear indication that we will have the students to fill those seats. And it was largely as a result of a lobbying effort by the Iowa City Area Development Group, who specifically argued that if, after all, if it fails, we can always come back with a smaller proposal. And now we're hearing, at least, that the One Community, One Bond group is got a goal of $200,000 that they want to raise to promote the bond. Listen, I have nothing against land developers and construction contractors. They will do quite well under whatever facilities plan we do. But it just doesn't make sense to commit to projects 6 or 7 years out in the timeline when we don't have enrollment projections showing that we'll need them. Maybe we'll end up needing them, but a wait-and-see approach would make more sense. Start with a smaller bond for a couple of years of projects, then see where we are, move forward accordingly with later bond proposals. That's why I'm voting no.
No, this is, I'm just double checking. The motion is to approve the language, right?
Right.
Okay.
And I'm going to say a few things too, because I'm going to vote no. And again, Chris always says things much better, more eloquent than I can, and that. And I agree with all of the points that Chris brought up. My concerns that we're not addressing the future needs of all of our students. There's not a serious commitment to career and technical education, nor special ed. I have concerns as well with being able to see that well into the future, because added capacity is going to cost us whether we use it or not. And capacity in one spot that is in the wrong place, we may not be doing enough fast enough in certain areas. And I agree very much with the prospect of bonding smaller in a smaller time frame. We are going to be spending the dollars of unborn generations that may want a little say in what is done with their tax dollars. There are many of us in the community with limited means, and this is a substantial expenditure, and it's an expensive community to live in, and we're always told how low our taxes are, but our valuation is at the top, and every square foot we build will have to be heated, cleaned, and maintained and cooled at a cost to the district whether we use it or not. And I have real concerns with going this far out, and I think it would be more prudent for us to do it on a shorter period, and that's why I'm going to be voting no.
So we are aware that the board did vote 5-2 to go for the full amount, and this is just the paragraph that goes to the voters that we're voting on. We're not we're not rediscussing.
I understand, but I just think it's like Chris says. I think it's important for us to explain, and the community will ultimately decide it. And if the community decides to go forward with it, I will enthusiastically help to make sure that the money is spent wisely and that everything is done the best benefit of the community.
And will you enthusiastically work to inform the community so they can vote accurately?
I will.
What's the implication of that question?
I am a free man and have my own opinions, and I agree with Paul. That we're not supposed to be rubber stampers up here, and I hope that we're all here for what we bring to the discussion, and that this isn't some type of small unit experiment on mind control and how we can get everybody thinking the same way. I look at everything that comes before us, Brian, and express and take it in what I feel is best for everyone, including the special ed kids and including the kids that aren't going to school or aren't going to college and are going to live in this community and are going to have to make a way in the world. And that's where it's at. And if I'm asked my opinion on it, I will share it.
So I just want to say, I know you're trying to wrap up.
Yeah.
You're doing a good job trying to wrap up. But, so I'm going to vote yes for kids and students, right, driving this plan. You all know that. I just want to say for the record, Chris, I've never been lobbied by ICAD or property developers personally.
Well, we all got the letter.
Yeah. You're talking about supporting the bond. They've never lobbied me on influencing the facilities master plan. You had your chance to talk. I have my chance to talk. I've never been influenced by ICAD or property developers. I just want to make sure we are clear. We are improving 100% of the classrooms, including special ed, including pre-K, including every single curriculum we offer. On capacity, I've yet to see unused capacity. If you recall, at the start of this plan, we had 27% of our kids in portables, 2 elementaries worth of kids in portables. Had we not got on with the facilities master plan, we'd had 40% of our kids in portables. That's not a 21st century learning environment. We need to get that number to 0, at least for the homerooms. Not to say never use temporary, but we don't want to have kids in temporaries. And then, from a tax rate standpoint, again, we're 10 of 10. You take the top 10 districts in Iowa, we are the 10th. We have the lowest tax rate of the top 10. We have the opportunity to correct these things that we've all talked tonight, and I look forward to the opportunity to do that.
Just to touch on what Latasha said, and I think Brian said it too, is that we're voting on the language to send out to the voters. And if Chris and Phil, if you were to get 2 more votes to vote no, then we wouldn't even be giving the community a chance to vote on anything. I mean, we're just killing it. So I mean, your yes vote would be to send the language as is to the voters to let them decide and take it out of our 7 hands and give it to our community. And just one quick point on what Director Liebig said about not being able to look out 6 years. Well, we started in 2013, and we looked out 6 years and knew that we were going to need a new elementary school in the north, and that's on there. And then 10 years from when we started, we knew that we were going to need a 500 student addition on Liberty. So that's looking out 10 years, and we're going to be able to do that. And that's 10 years is much farther than 6 years. I mean, the plan so far is, like I said, it's not perfect, but we've followed it, and it's addressed some major needs.
Any further discussion? All right, I would like to call for the vote. Please, Kim.
Online voting is open. All votes have been cast and the motion carries with Directors Rotland, Kirschling, Lynch, Ressler, and Deloach voting yea, and Directors Liebig and Hemingway voting nay.
Okay. Next up is legislative update. Steve?
Sure, I'll just give you a really quick recap. We had the end of the legislative session this last week. We have our last forum this Friday where we have our state legislators joining us to give us their update and recap on their opinion of how things went this session. Usually within the next week or so, we will have a fairly detailed recap that comes from the Iowa Department of Ed. I was at a meeting with Ryan Wise last week. They are busy working on that right now because some of the legislation literally came through during the last 24 hours. They're still doing interpretation on that, and we'll have that for us, like I said, within a week or two. Probably the two biggest things that happened in the last 2 weeks, we talked about at our last board meeting, which is we thought it was coming, and indeed it did come to pass, that the state has repealed the third grade retention requirements, so we will no longer be required to do that. They also chose not to fund the summer reading program. We have gotten a lot of questions in the community. Just to keep in mind, we run our own programs here, have for years, preceding the requirements of the state. We will continue to do so. We're working very hard to expand opportunities for kids this summer to participate in the programs, and we will continue to look for opportunities moving forward to do that. Probably the last thing that I would say, which will come out, I think, in the Daily Iowan article later this week, we recognize that students need that intervention earlier rather than at third grade, so we continue to put a majority of our effort in the primary years, which is K1, 2, and not just pushing all those efforts in at the third grade. So with that, I will leave that, and I will send out that update as soon as Ryan and the team of the DE have that prepared and get that on my desktop.
Thanks. We'll now move into our teaching and learning portion of our agenda with our before and after school program update. Who do y'all want me to direct questions to? Amy, Laura?
Before we get started on this, I was going to ask, could we put this off to the next meeting? We didn't get the information until 4/12 yesterday. I didn't realize that the BASPs didn't even get the contracts till after we got them. I'm just going to be honest, I don't feel prepared to discuss this. I haven't had time to go through it with a fine-tooth comb. I haven't had time to have constituents come and talk to me about what they think. All that we've heard is what we got for community comment tonight. I know you want a signed agreement that you want to bring to us on May 23rd. I'm wondering if we could delay that a bit so that there could be some time for all the parties to review everything. I'm very interested in hearing about this. I just haven't had time to review it so that I can feel like I'm asking the questions I need to ask.
I think the purpose for tonight was to be able to provide some information about what has led up to the interagency agreement, and so we're more than happy to continue to do that.
Well, let's start with the good news. So the good news is there's no board action required tonight, and I don't think we're planning any.
Right.
We can certainly
No.
provide direction. If you want a motion to table it, there's no harm in tabling it, but I'd also just say there's no harm in just hearing the information because we're not taking action. And as you said, Lori, we don't, so just so the public knows, we don't approve like the blank contract, right, or the agreement. We approve it once they're signed and come back. So we're not approving that tonight. It would only come back once it's signed and we're doing the final approval.
Exactly. That was our understanding. We were just going to provide some information. We knew the board wouldn't have had an opportunity to discuss this with us or know much about it until this presentation.
I'm going to just throw out an idea too, which would be it might make sense to put this on a work session after this, because most of the questions I have are very particular about how exactly is this going to affect everything.
Somebody suggested that last meeting, but no.
I'm fine with work session.
No,
but
I
we
think
had
that could
people
be
here who
right.
wanted
I
to
think a
speak.
work
I don't
session.
object to that.
No,
But the details of it are where my questions are, and just what these different things, what the implications of doing it a certain way rather than another way, and if we could kind of get everybody together, including maybe the BASP people around the table back there, I think that could be useful.
So to close on this, Lori, if you want to make a motion to table it, you certainly can do that. Or we can just hear it tonight and decide if we put it back on the agenda or.
Okay, I'll address that in a moment. So do I understand correctly that the board has no involvement in this agreement until after the BASPs have either signed it or not signed it? Is that what we're being told?
It's up to us. No, the board can insert itself at any part in the process. The part we have to be involved in is the final approval.
After they've either signed or not signed?
Yes. So just like anything else, though, we could have a year ago said, hey, I'm interested in BASP and I want to work the process between now and then, and you know what I mean?
Okay. We've also heard from members of the Equity Committee that they have recommendations that they would like to make. They haven't had a chance to review this, so I guess I will make a motion my motion is twofold, that we table this discussion, and that is because I like to be able to ask questions when we have a discussion, and I don't feel like I have enough information. This is the only time we're discussing this. I assume we're not going to revisit the whole discussion again in 2 weeks. So my motion, Kim, sorry, would be to table this discussion and also to delay the date for the BASPs to sign the agreement and for it to come to the board for another month or whatever you tell me is doable. Is a month doable?
Are there time constraints that we get ourselves up against if we postpone it?
There's a motion on the.
We need a second before we can discuss it. Okay. My quick question is this is just information we're discussing, right? So I know there's quite a few people who are here specifically around this, and I would hate for them to have sat to this point and for them not to at least hear that explanation, which can add to the conversation. And I don't see any reason why we can't add this to a work session and bring it back to the board. I looked at the future agendas and they're not really heavy. So to me, it makes sense that we could also at least hear them out for the work that they did to bring this to us. And, you know, if we have some questions, we can submit them and bring it back again. I just think that I look at this as the beginning of the conversation. They've had some beginning conversations in the community. This is another piece. We're hearing it. Another piece is we don't have to make a decision till what, August?
You're very persuasive.
I'm not trying to be, I'm just saying,
chair.
I feel bad if it's like 30 people waiting to hear this and we're like, nope, sorry, you're not going to hear this tonight. So I just don't, I mean, I understand what you're saying, but I'm just putting it out there that I don't see if anyone's going to be harmed by
Okay,
the
so what I'm going to
presentation.
do is I'm going to withdraw my motion. I'm going to just change my motion to simply be a delay for the board to review the agreement so that we have time to discuss it in a work session after the equity committee has had time to make their recommendations and bring it back to us for us to review. And then that also allows the community to have time to review it. And I just want to make the point that it's very frustrating when we don't receive information until the day before. So I'd like to make a plea that we could please have the information. I know we sometimes ask for things at the last minute. Steve, I know what you're about to tell me.
I would just remind you that we asked for space to do this, and it was requested to put it on the board meeting. We asked for conversation at the work session, and it was asked to be placed on a board meeting and not a work session. And I understand that because the intent was to have it in front of the audience and not necessarily at the back table. But we are working as fast as we can. We literally had about a 7-day turnaround to try to get this done, and that's very difficult on the team. So if in the future you would like more time, please ask us for a recommendation on how long it will take us to get it to you, and we'll be happy to provide that.
I just want to echo that. I mean, the board asked for this, and we caused the turnaround, and we asked for it at a board meeting, which.
We need
I'm really arguing with you, but there were
just a point of
drafts already
clarification. We do need a
underway,
second
so I'll
before
second that
we-
withdrawal.
Oh, just hold on. No, time out.
Just hold on, because we don't even know what the motion is. But I'm just saying, like, we're having a substantial conversation about with the motion on the
So
floor.
time out. So Lori withdrew. Who was the second?
I was the second, so I'm withdrawing the second.
Okay.
Now we're clean.
Or seconding the withdrawal.
Okay, right. I'm
whatever it
like,
is.
whoa.
Would you like me to state my second motion?
Why don't we do it at the end? Do you really want to do it now?
Can they present the information and then you can make the motion to table? or
Because we
push back
control the
the-
timing. We control the timing, so we're making a motion.
If that's the best way to do it, then I can
Okay.
live with that, so.
Just try that.
You know, again, I just want to emphasize, what I wanted tonight was just an update about where things stand. I didn't necessarily need to have the next version of the agreement in front of me. I know there were versions already out there weeks ago, and so that's why I wasn't feeling like it was too much of a time pressure request.
Well, I think you'll be happily surprised then, because this is where we've come from and where we are now. So, are we ready to start? Yeah?
Is everybody
Okay.
all right?
All right.
Okay. All
Thanks.
right.
Thank you, everyone. And certainly, we are very open to questions or comments or the work session, whatever comes as next steps after this. I'm Laura Daly, the Director of Learning Supports, and work closely with several people here who have been a part of this process over the years. And thanks, I know we have a lot of people that have a vested interest and very engaged in this topic as well. So thanks for being here. The first piece of information that might build some background is just a little bit of a history of the BASP agreement. We have had a valuable service provided to families and students for many, many years in our district, provided by our BASPs. We want that to continue. That's an important part of this conversation. We also know that as a district, we uphold a level of responsibility for services provided by any of our partner organizations, and that's why we think that we need to be intentional and work collaboratively. To give a little bit of a timeline, in 2012, the Community Education District-wide Advisory Council was formed, and BASPs were determined to be a significant focus at that time. And as a district, we created and signed the first interagency BASP agreement in 2013. At that time, it was recognized that there wasn't any sort of a written agreement in place. And just thinking about best practices when you're sharing facilities and serving students, we have interagency agreements for many, many things. And so that's why that came to be. It was renewed again in 2015. And during that time, we've continued to allow no rental fees for the BASPs, and also have just continued to provide some administrative support, and the agreement is up again in July of 2017. So about before and after school programs, we are working toward alignment with our district goals, but absolutely recognize that employing different strategies and action steps is important. Each program is unique. Each program, in providing the quality services and supports to kids, we believe it needs to be done in a recreational format. Kids need that time to play, to have choice, to be able to develop their social, emotional, and academic and cognitive development, but in a different type of way than during the school day. That's why that flexibility is important in the programs, and so we in no way are suggesting a certain academic curriculum or a specified way or certain designated activities that's done. We really would be looking for the BASPs to identify all of the great things that they're already doing that align with our district goals. So we want to stress that we do believe that flexibility is important, and that the nature of before and after school care is different than school day. As you know, our district has 3 important strategic goals. They focus on improvement in reading, math, and also providing increased access and quality educational experiences for all children. And so these, as we think about the 3 goals, are ones that we would like all of the programs to identify with, and we'll explain that a little bit more as we go along. And then recently, through a collaborative effort of some discussions that have taken place over probably the last few years' time, the CDAC approved, the Community Education District-wide Advisory Committee approved and identified this as the vision for before and after school programming. And this comes from a culmination of the out of school initiative, the standards of care that were developed by the BASP directors and district staff. Took a lot of time and effort, I've heard, over a period of time to develop those standards of care. And also on that CDAC board, we do, there is a BASP liaison who's a part of that, and then is a part of the disseminating the information and communicating with all of the directors. And so as you can see, that just highlights many of the things that we've talked about already, just alignment with building goals, having collaboration with school day learning, alignment with the district's equity plan, and just promoting that overall development of youth. So what's different about the interagency agreement? One area is that as we take a look at the district's facilities use agreement, and the criteria of a nonprofit partner, you can see that we do have some policy and fee rates, as well as some of the criteria. Then, of course, as you can see, one of which is that the goals and objectives of the partner agencies are similar or compatible with district goals and objectives. What we are hoping for is that One of those 3 district goals that I just alluded to a few slides ago would be identified by each program, and each program then would create some simple action steps to identify how their activities align with either the reading, the math, or the equitable environments for all students.
Laura, can I ask a quick question?
Yes.
Will you all be providing some of that to them so that they understand what that is?
Yes. So in May, I think on May 10th, Joan and Amy have already sent out information about a workshop that we would like to provide and share just a template and steps and make that as simple as possible for everybody. So the other things going along with what is different about the interagency agreement, we are also asking that the programs provide demographic reporting regarding the students that are served in the program, the staff that are working in the program, and board members. And this is to go right along with our diversity goal of trying to make sure, we need a baseline of knowing if we are the students that we are serving, the families that we are serving, if we are increasing a reasonable level of diversity, just like we're working on definitely within our school staffing programs as well, and making sure that we had that diverse, wide representation from different backgrounds and experiences that people have had. We're also asking then to increase access for families through the set-aside formula, and those funds that would be secured through the community education program. And so we do have a sliding scale that, based upon a school's free and reduced lunch rate, would determine the amount of slots that then would be the set-aside slots. And some important considerations with that, we know, as many people have already mentioned tonight, that managing and providing care and a quality education for students is in no way easy. And so there are sometimes staffing issues or wait list issues and capacity issues that when we're trying to provide access to everyone. And so some of our programs do have the immediate access. There isn't a wait list or it's some of these other challenging situations currently. Some of our programs some of the programs may have staffing or wait lists or capacity issues. And so recognizing that and also feedback and working with the directors at a recent meeting, Joan has maybe an example of how we've worked through that issue, and because we received some feedback saying it's not as easy just to set aside these slots. And so she might be able to explain a little example that's occurred recently.
Okay, is this working? Okay, thanks. And thanks for your time this evening. It's good to kind of clarify some things. I think that some of the before and after school folks were saying it's not a one-size-fits-all, and certainly when it comes to the wait list issue, that is very true. We have some buildings who would really love to have more students in their programs, and we have others that have a long waiting list. And we have, there's certain geographic areas in our community that really do not have enough daycare. So recently, Amy and I had a meeting with the student family advocate and the BSAP director at Horn Elementary. And what we're willing to do when there's a wait list is let's just have a plan of how you're going to make that work. And so we had 4 slots set aside at Horn, and Horn's a tough go because they have a large school, they have 195 kids on free lunch, they have 120 capacity license through the Department of Human Services, and they're using every inch they can. So they can't just say, oh, we'll take more kids. They don't have room for it. They've maxed out according to their DHS license. So they're in a tough spot, tougher than many buildings. And so what we're going to do is we're going to fill those spots this spring. So rather than waiting until fall, we'll fill them right away. And knowing that we have a high mobility, maybe some kids will move in the fall, and then we'll find another kid who might need it. And we'll accommodate the emergency situations as best we can. Because no one wants empty spots. We have, in those buildings where people are dying for childcare, absolutely, we do not want to we don't want something sitting empty. That would just be a waste of resource. So I think this is an example where we can take the individual situations in those buildings and work with the student family advocate and the director to come up with a plan of how we're going to get the kids in.
Thank you, Joan. So, in conclusion, just some ongoing support and next steps that we do have in place, or the workshop, as we talked about, to try to help provide as much assistance as possible with that action planning process. Kingsley, as our Director of Equity Engagement, has talked to the BASPs about some ongoing assistance with the diversity staffing and maybe providing some strategies for that. We'll continue to, of course, Amy Mentier, our sitting next to Joan too, she's our extended day learning coordinator. We'll continue to work closely with this process. The timeline that we currently have in place, knowing that that's up for further discussion, is May 16th for the signed copies, looking for that approval on May 23rd and agreements July 1st. So that was the current timeline, and that's what we had prepared to share as an overview with you tonight. Are there any additional questions?
Well, thanks. I was the person who asked to put it on the agenda. So some of the things that I'm wondering as you're doing the presentation, I've been previously spent, well, I guess about 14 times I've taught contracts at the law school. And so I come at this thinking about it as a contract, and some of my questions are through that lens. And so my first question is, in that first section about general conditions, and that where it identifies the three goals, one or more of the three goals, what would it take to break that clause of the contract? I mean, it's only in there because it's to bind them to something, and I'm just not clear yet exactly what that is.
Chris, I mean, it is focused on looking at how we can align with the strategic goals. I mean, we had this, I think the little issue with the conversation that's happening is that, you're kind of coming in midstream. Frankly, some of the information and even some of the questions I felt were answered at a previous BASP meeting. We talked about, what would be the requirements as far as according to the three strategic goals. We were very open to what that language may be, and also for the fact that this was a draft form, we were continually working on how that language could shift and change. So there wasn't the thought of what you're talking about, that we're going to bind somebody to, ensuring that reading curriculum is met in a certain way. I think that I understand that, but you understand,
that what matters is what's on the page, not what you've said orally in a meeting. And so if I were going to sign this thing and I was a BASP, I'd be wondering what my legal obligation is after I sign it, and I'm just not sure from that opening section.
Yeah, and we can address that. I even stated it during the meeting that we would address looking at that language. But we do know from a district facility use policy that, it has to align with the policies in the district. That's within our use agreement. And so, there is some, to that extent, there is some language that is kind of hard line there where, if we're going to continue to use the kind of nonprofit status, it has to make sure that it aligns in that particular way.
Is there any reason to think that anything that's being done right now in these BASPs would not be complying with that section?
I think that a lot of the things that are being mentioned as far as additions were questions that I think we have as far as, demographic information.
I'm talking about the specific three goals section.
I think that's what we're trying to address. If you're talking about, with looking at the third strategic goal and deciding whether or not, they're looking at culturally responsive discussion and having that kind of information. I can personally tell you that I've been a part of 2 trainings that the BSP directors have been a part of, that we've talked about that and discussed that. And so, to that extent, they have been doing that work, but it's just clearly kind of outlining what those things mean.
But it doesn't bind them to all 3 goals, is what I'm hearing, only 1 or 2. So even if they weren't doing anything to comply with that, they wouldn't necessarily be breaking the agreement. You can see why I'm just unclear about exactly what this is obligating the BSP.
And we can clean that up. And I hear there's a couple of board members here. I think we'd be more than willing to meet with some of the parent boards to discuss it, because I think we've had this discussion, at least initially at the director level, or at the BSP director level, but we haven't necessarily had this discussion with each of the parent boards, and I think that's an opportunity as well. There are a lot of questions, and I think that, while this isn't necessarily the greatest avenue to kind of address questions as they come up, I think we can sit down and talk with folks. I think, Joan bringing up Horn BASP, I think that's a perfect example of, sitting down and working on individual needs. That was discussed during the meeting as far as, you have this kind of overarching plan. What about the individual needs and the strategies of the particular BASP programs? And we discussed, we discussed it during the meeting orally, but we discussed having those meetings individually with each of the BSPs to discuss those needs. And that was one of those situations that, it worked out. I don't think we've met with all the programs in that particular way.
I mean, I'm not against any discussion. I think they're great, but they're not legally binding in the face of this sort of language necessarily. And so,
and that's one point.
A concrete hypothetical. I mean, you got these kids. A lot of times, it's kind of choice of play time, as far as I understand it. And so, is this, if it's the proficiency in reading or something that's the goal, does that imply that there will have to be a structured group for activity that everybody's doing, or else we don't know if everybody's getting the reading part? Or does it just imply you're going to set them off into a word-rich environment and let them choose what to do?
No, I mean, we can look at that. I mean, I think that's a language piece that we talked about cleaning up before. I would say that there's other issues that are a little more heightened from the BSP standpoint as far as what they would like as well, just from the community comment, but also other concerns that were brought up before. But, I mean, that one is one that I think we can be relatively flexible on.
Well, can I make one request?
Doesn't say that, though.
Can I make one request? It seems like, maybe I'm making a comment. It seems like there is a need to, instead of having presentations to these parent boards, that we need to have conversations. So I know there's a presentation or something coming up. Let's just sit down, don't get your clicker, and go through the slides. But I have a tendency to come off being funny, but I'm being really serious. Let's have a conversation, because everybody, when you get in your feelings, because we talking about our kids and stuff, then we don't hear very well. And so I think there needs to be a little restart somewhere here. People walk back through this a little bit more, and let's just, you know what I'm saying, fan the fires out, get this cleared up, get language clear to folks, because it's hard when you're a parent around, you're a nonprofit, and someone's throwing kind of legalese at you. That's tough. So we have time. This don't have to be, kids don't start before and after school program till August, right?
No, they're
right.
Summer.
Okay, there's summer.
July 1st.
Okay, so
Yeah.
we need to decide if this is going to be implemented in July, or is this going to be something that we're going to start at the next school year? So that's something that you all need to figure out. You need a timeline. You all need a list of dates where you're going to meet with these different groups or something. I'm just saying, the clearer we can make this for folks, the better. And I don't know, maybe I'm talking out of turn. I can't speak for the entire board, but I just feel like if we can clearly, I'd rather give too much information than not enough. And so if we need to put in here definitions of what academic means, then put it in there. If you need to put definitions of what these different things are, I'd rather this thing be 40 pages with too much information than not enough. I'm just saying, because then people have something to revert back to, because all of us can quit tomorrow, and then there'll be this piece of paper here binding people to something and nobody knows what it means. So the clearer we can make it, I think, can help.
I agree completely with that. And also, the conversation part especially, and that's what maybe could happen at a work session. I mean, I listened to the presentation, and it's informative, but I know that, Tammy Osterhaus, who's been doing it for 25 years, is going to hear and see things that I just don't see. Just to throw the other one out there, though, in terms of coming at it from a contract point of view, it's a negotiation. And so to the extent that we are demanding more, usually there's some give and some take in a negotiation, and I'm not clear yet on whether we're actually, I assume we wouldn't just go in and say, we're going to give you the same stuff we gave you before, and we're going to expect you to do more. Now, again, if we were just talking about some vendor on our list, fine, bargain hard, but these are organizations, parent organizations that have a long history in the district, that have a lot of loyal following. And so that's part of my concern also. I mean, and again, the equity aspects of this seem like very worthy goals, but I'd just like to get a clear sense of, well, what's the consequence? What are we really demanding, and how easy is it for the BASPs to do it? I'll stop talking.
I would just comment real quickly. I mean, I think you make a great point as far as, having that conversation. And again, like I said, during the meeting about 2 or maybe 3 weeks ago, welcome conversations. I'll never say that I don't welcome those. I do want to say that, because you did add a but statement, it is an access issue. I mean, we want to be clear about that particular point. And, I know that there was discussion as far as parents maybe being upset with particular language about, reserving spots and access. But I mean, I'm sure that if we, polled the entire parents of our, school district and other communities as well, I mean, people would come and say, I have access issues. I've had access problems. I know that there are folks that obviously our learning supports department have talked to. I know that I've talked to folks. I mean, I want to make sure that we don't, I know we're focused on that first kind of general kind of preamble, which is important, don't get me wrong. But we are talking about access here. And even when kind of talking about the Equity Committee looking at some of the information, one of the things that came out from the email conversation and why they came tonight was a discussion as far as process around students with disabilities. That isn't necessarily in the particular agreement at this particular time with, kind of clearly in there about what the process is going to be for our 21st century grant programs compared to our BSPs with non-21st century grants. But I think that's another important thing that I think needs to be discussed as well, that I don't want to, not, I want you to lose sight on as far as how we move this conversation forward, because we are talking about access, and I think that, aligning our policies or talking about aligning our policies was putting it clearly in the document. There's a lot of interagency agreements that just say, and I think even I don't want to speak out of turn, but I think even our facility use agreement that speaks to making sure that, the ones that we're giving a nonprofit status to clearly aligns with district goals and policies. So putting the document, I think, was an area of just wanting to make sure that people have the information in there and read it instead of having to go to a link or another website to read that information in another place. But again, I just want to make clear, this is an access issue. I mean, so I don't want us to not necessarily focus on. No, I don't think. I just want to make sure that's clear before we move forward.
Can I be clear?
Of that issue is okay with me. I just want to know the implications of it.
Yeah.
Here in the next presentation about what are the access issues, because you hear things in communities, but I really want to know. I mean, we're gonna put it out there. I hope the parents are all right. We're gonna put it out there. What are the are we really serving? Is it mirroring our schools? Are we really serving the kids that are in our schools? So I don't know how we get that information, but I think that's really important, that if we're talking about equity and we say we serve all kids and no matter what their situation, then let's see that. I'm assuming that information is out there somewhere. Bring that back to the table so that we can know, what the access issues are. Can we find out who's all being served? Is it being served equitably? Because I see how that can be an issue, and y'all know that's what I ran on, so I'm going to keep putting it out there, because we do that sometimes, and some of it is unconscious, and we can go into the whole, all pieces of that. But, are we serving the population of our schools or not? And if we're not, then we need to ask new questions, different questions, and get those answered.
And let me be clear as well. I mean, I think Tammy came up and spoke to this. There are, our BSPs have done a wonderful job. Our parent boards obviously have done a wonderful job. I haven't necessarily met them personally, but, again, they've worked with Joan and other folks as far as addressing some of these needs. Again, what we're trying to do is put this in a particular agreement to ensure that that's this conversation, the same conversation, or the same outlook moving forward. Sure. And so, I guess I do want to address and give kudos to Tammy and obviously all the other BSPs. I don't necessarily know who's representing the audience tonight, that they have been doing that and they have been working with folks. But again, it's about putting that in the agreement to make sure that we're doing this. I had this conversation with them today. If all of us are gone and the new group comes up, who's to say that we all have that information or are clear about the objectives moving forward? And so that's what we want to ensure that we have to do, even long after Kim is gone.
So that's a long time.
I better leave Kim alone.
So
right.
I'm really glad that we're getting a chance to dig into this just a little bit. And I think it was a good ask on the part of Director Liebig to ask for this to be something that we dig into, because I was starting to hear some concerns and some chatter from various BASP directors, and I tried to summarize through conversations, tried to summarize a few different questions that I had specifically, and some of them have already been answered. But one that we haven't talked about is when it comes to the professional development of our BASP directors in item 1C and Roman numeral 2. A with cultural competency training and so on and so forth. With professional development, is there some type of a holdup on getting our BASP directors a professional development credit for some of their PD?
Yeah, we're working on that. And honestly, that was brought up at our last discussion as far as going through that process. Just be frank, I hadn't got a chance to talk to Heidi about that. I've been talking to her about some other things, and I think she's been out of town for a little bit. But that's something that, again, from the BASP director standpoint, they said it was a pretty clear process. As far as the information I need to provide, that's not a problem as well. And so, again, I want to give kudos to the BSPs because I have already done some trainings already. They've been agreeing to that and going forth with that, but I think to get that accreditation as well, or that credit as well, I think is important. So, that's just sitting down and really kind of understanding the requirements and submitting the information. So, whenever we can sit down and have that conversation, I will.
Okay. So another question I have is when it came to developing our strategic goals, which we've talked about a little bit, and that are actually stated here in the general conditions, expected outcomes. We talked about when we were developing those goals for the district that everything ties into them. And I actually appreciate the fact that language is in this interagency agreement saying this is what we're trying to do in our schools. And as I read through it, it says will align their program goals with one or more of the district goals. I guess one kind of off-the-wall question that I have is since BASP programs don't reach all of our students in all of our schools, they reach a lot of our students in our schools, are we viewing BASP as an extension of the learning day? Additionally, if so, are other programs that are outside of the school day, co-curriculars, scouting, music, for example, are they having to show how their programs tie into our strategic goals? Thinking broader than just BASPs. Is this something that something that we're going to apply to everybody who wants to use our facilities? And I don't know if there's an answer right now. I just want to get that out there. It feels good to get it out.
So, there's the first question I think that Joan and Amy can answer. I can answer the second question with yes. This is something that, the state has talked about. This is something that, as we talk about ensuring that all of our, I just lost my train of thought, all of our programs that exist in our schools are equitable programs across the board. We want to continue in that effort. And so, we haven't branched out to every single program. There are programs that I've worked with in the past and I'm currently working with that we're trying to ensure the same thing. Now, have they been as elaborate as an interagency agreement as this one? No, but as was discussed even at community comment, and also this is a different organization. There's 14 separate organizations, is that correct? Mm-hmm. 14 separate organizations that we work with. It was important for us to kind of have that alignment across the board. So if a child was going from one BSP to another, the expectation of following this equitable program or equitable goals is ensured. But again, we are looking at all programs. I can tell you, I don't want to tell you the particular program, but because that one was the nature of a complaint, but I can tell you that we look at all the issues in relation to any programs that are in our buildings.
And this is a really valuable commodity. There's only a portion of the kids served, and so we want to take full advantage of that valuable resource that we have. And so I think it's important that aligns with our goals because it's a significant resource that we're giving them. So I think it's an opportunity to, how does this further our goal towards our students?
So here's another question. I know there's been a couple meetings with BASP directors, I think right in this room. I know there was at least one that was right in this room. And I'm always interested in, it sounds like we've already kind of touched on, I think Latasha mentioned it, the difference between communication and conversation, and here's what we're planning to do. One of the things that we've always tried to do, hopefully, sometimes better than others, is to get community input, and you know our BASP directors are the community. So I'm curious, is there this is maybe just me not knowing, is there a framework where the BASP directors have a couple, 3 representatives who are able to come and sit down with the district to hammer these things out? Because it's hard to have a conversation when there's 20-something people and parent boards that they are responsible for answering to. So maybe I'm just
Well,
don't know.
and what you all did 2 years ago, which I think was really smart, on our Community Education Advisory Committee, which oversees all of our community ed programs, including before and after school programs, you appointed a BASAP director to represent that. So, and Amy Faulkner has been in that position, and Amy's been a fabulous liaison, and she communicates back out. So there's just, I think that was a really good step in the right direction, and there's always more opportunity. Everyone is very busy, and we have a lot of really complicated issues, and so it's a time factor, I think, more than anything, of how sometimes things get very tasky rather than more process-oriented, because you got to get it done. You know, it's got to be done by July 1st, and, you know, it's just, it's a function of time. And we're certainly willing to other ideas for structures of what could happen to improve that communication.
Brian, can I interject? I think it might be helpful
please.
just to understand also a timeline with how this has unfolded so far. Starting back in February, the groups that you brought it to, including the principals, as well as that small team to get some feedback. Do you want to just kind of walk through that?
That's right. That's right. We did, back in February, the first draft came out February 10th, and then we met with 2 BSAP directors and our liaison, and just visited about the interagency agreement, and got some feedback from them as well about some things that they wanted to see, just building principals signing off on this and space considerations. So that was, you know, another thing that we did. It was my bad for not including the DHS representative at that meeting, because then she came into our bigger meeting quite upset and had some misinformation. So if I had to do it over again, I would have had her involved with that from the very beginning, so that she was clear on what we need to do. And we had another meeting, and that got cleared up. That was a challenge, and I regret that. Oh yeah, and then we had an informational meeting on March 7th, which again, we didn't probably allocate enough time. It could have been a full day meeting going through all of this, and so we tried to present the information and have some table group discussions and bring back their feedback. We brought that back for the second draft of the interagency agreement, and then on March 30th, we had another meeting with the directors just to really process, and that was a really great meeting. Kingsley came, and we really did have the discussion that Latasha was talking about, because the tone of that meeting was just far more productive than the first meeting.
You go ahead.
Well, the good news, what I'm hearing here, the good news is that we have a whole bunch of BASP directors who love working with kids. And we've got a whole bunch of people here who are interested in improving access and trying to make our BASP programs more uniform. I get that. I think that there's some positive things to focus on here. I really appreciate having the conversation. I hope there's energy to continue the conversation and have it a conversation. I keep saying that word, but there's a reason for that. I do recognize that not all, you know, of our, as one of the speakers said before, you know, not all of our programs are uniform. Not all of our buildings are uniform. Not all of our spaces for use are uniform. And you know, I do appreciate. I hope that there can be some flexibility, you know, from program to program, but understanding the need for a comprehensive interagency agreement that spells out everything for future BASP. I also recognize the importance of that. So again, this is not meant to be, you know, the Inquisition here to say, why was this done? Why? I just want to find out, and I appreciate everybody being here. And I appreciate the people who have reached out to have conversations and educate me. And I appreciate the answers that I've already received, not only tonight, but in lead up to tonight's meeting from the folks sitting here. So thank you.
Just quickly, speaking of the timeline, I mean, there's a line at the end of the Q&A that says basically, it sounds like if we can't get agreements reached with these providers by this July 1st date, that we'll, you know, issue requests for proposals and get new providers. And I don't know whether that's just pro forma, but I just want to go on record saying that the idea of completely replacing our providers with different providers, if it came to that, would need an awfully strong justification. I mean, given the reinvention of the wheel and the problems that would probably be caused by that.
Okay.
Can I ask another question, please?
Sure.
So, Joan, I was just wondering if you could provide a little more clarification. You used the example of Horn, and that, and I looked up it, they would have 4 slots set aside, but you said they're full with 120 students. So what does that look like there with having 4 slots set aside and full 120 with a waiting list?
So they would basically take, this spring, they'll take 116 instead of 120, and we will provide 4 referrals.
And you'll pay for them throughout the year, whether they're filled or not?
Not, well, if some of them might move on to child care assistants, and then they might be vacant, and we'll replace it with somebody else. But yes, we have budgeted. We took, we had $50,000 in funding that we divided, and that's how we came up with the formula of the 4, 3, 2, and 1. And it would be, I think, 28 scholarships that we split among the programs that don't receive a 21st Century Community Learning Center grant, because those do more like 30 to 40 kids at each site, and that's how we divided up the formula.
So if the spots are vacant, then the program doesn't get paid for those kids?
That's right, and that's why if it's a waiting list, it's a very big deal, because you could fill that in with a, you know, a paying kid.
Well, you can't, because then you can't kick them out when you need the spot for the other kid.
And it depends again on your DHS license, because some buildings are maxed out in terms of space. You have to have 35 square feet, and you have to have a sink and a toilet for every 15 kids. So some buildings are licensed for the max, and then they're stuck. For example, Horn. Weber is another person that we talked with. They're licensed for far more than what they take right now, so they could put a kid in, and they tweak their student to staff ratio a little bit.
Right.
So there's not really a financial gain or loss, it's just you're changing it. I would say it's those programs that are at their max with a waiting list that we need to think about differently, because it's a tough spot to be in.
So just playing the outsider here, it seems like it would be frustrating if I were a BSP director that was told I have to have 4 spaces, but this school over there, they only have to have 1 space because they have less poverty in their school. Their parents potentially will have to pay less for their before and after school program, because my program's now going to have to charge more, because I'm not going to get paid for those 4 slots unless there happens to be a kid in them. And if there's not, then my own parents are going to have to pay more now. So I just wonder if there's a way to reconcile that so it doesn't feel unfair to those schools that have 4 slots versus schools that have 1 slot.
And I think there are some schools, I mean, we can take a look at all of this. There are some schools that would like more than 4, you know, and there's some schools that would like more than 1 or 2. And so I think it's kind of the sensibility of the program of how much more they want to include the kids that can't afford it otherwise.
Would there be a way to reconcile that, though, so it doesn't put a disproportionate financial burden on the programs that have a higher poverty in their school?
When you say reconcile, are you saying that we would not have those slots available? I'm confused.
No, just all the schools get the same. I don't know. I don't have the answer, but it doesn't seem fair to me that a school with low poverty only has to hold 1 slot and they get to fill all their other slots with paying customers. And another school, because they have higher poverty, they then have to hold open spots that they may or may not get paid for. And what will happen is the parents that are already enrolled in that program will make up the difference, because the programs can't survive if they don't have enough paying customers.
So there's a lot to tease out there, and I think the first point is that of our 20 buildings, 9 of them have waiting lists. So many of the buildings don't have a waiting list, in which case there's no financial consideration, because they have access. They can get in when they want. I think the other thing, to consider here is that 3 of those are City of Coralville, and they already have the set-aside thing. So we're talking 6 schools, 6 of the 20 that have waiting lists and space constraints. And I want to meet with them individually because some of them would not have the contractual space constraints. It's just the staffing constraints, in which case you can add a kid and there's not a financial hardship. So, I mean, that's where I completely agree with them. We need to individualize that a little bit. So Horn will, in essence, get paid all year for those 4 slots, if we keep plugging them in. So we just have to have a plan on how the Student and Family Advocate and the BASCP work together on that.
I guess this is just off the top of my head, maybe to make a standard across the board, no school will have to have 3 spots unpaid at any time. Every school will be expected to have 1 slot unpaid at any time. And that way it's not disproportionate between the schools of high poverty and low poverty.
And the highest poverty schools, we would really want to have a 21st Century Schools grant because, we're just barely scratching the surface with 4 kids. So, so Coralville Central is one of those schools that's just right on the cusp of being eligible for a grant, in which case we would want to expand and make it a much bigger program.
Yeah, when I looked at your list, I mean, that's I think where the rub is the programs that are right in the middle. They're not getting the 21st century programming funding, but they are still very high need populations. They're working families that are already paying for BASP are not going to, it's not going to bode well, like one of the community commenters said earlier, it's not going to bode well when these families are all informed you have to now pay for, another $10 a month because we have to make up the difference. So I just am asking if you could just have each program have the same financial loss, essentially, by having a spot held open. And, the schools such as Horn or whoever, can still hold 4 slots, but the district would pay for 3 of those, no matter whether they're filled or not, so that it's fair for all the programs.
Just a quick point of information, too. It's my understanding that Trump is proposing to completely eliminate the funding for 21st century after-school care.
Okay.
Thanks a lot, Director Liebig.
And so,
Well,
and
that's a
just
whole
another,
other topic.
we just had a site visit, and Obama had also recommended 21st Century Schools getting cut, and so our visit with our Department of Ed person, he felt pretty confident.
Well, believe it when you see it, right? Sure. Yeah.
Okay. I think I'm a not speak because that would be in our best interest. Okay, anyone else have to contribute to this so we can move
So
on?
are we gonna have a work session with actual BASP
I think when we get to
representation?
agenda setting, that would be a good place to put that.
So I would like to make a motion that the BSPs not have to sign the agreement until June. I don't have a calendar in front of me, but I'd like to give them more time so that we can have more time to review what they're asked to sign. June 9? So I'd like to make a motion to change the date that the agreements will come to the board to be June 9th instead of May 23rd.
Second.
Further discussion?
Is that enough time, Steve?
We should have enough time to have the meetings, have DHS get some revisions to you, and if so desired, have a work session on May 23rd where we can share that information in terms of progress and conversation.
I would just add to that, because this is on, public record, I would love the opportunity for parent boards to meet with us and talk and discuss. I know that there's some members of parent boards that have come to the meetings, but I think it's good, especially tonight, where we have multiple members of those parent boards to kind of have that conversation. So I would be all for it and look forward to hearing from you.
You heard it here first.
Okay. Since there's a motion and a second, can we vote, please?
Online voting is open. All votes have been cast and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
Okay, we're going on to operations. hear about our annual grounds maintenance report.
Okay, thank you. We'll keep this short. There's 2 pages attached to the item, and I thought a little explanation would be in order. The first one is a summary of grounds care costs for the last 3 years. I know this is an annual update, but we took a 3-year look, and I'll come back to that in just a second. And the second page identifies a lot of the operations or tasks that were performed by outsourced contractors prior to bringing it back in-house. Those are the shaded areas. The parts that are not shaded are additional duties that we've added to the responsibilities of the grounds crews. Is pretty significant. You know, the weather, the mowing season, the active lawn growing season is 6 to 7 months, and we have 12-month employees, so it's nice to keep them busy, and it's nice to keep them busy when it rains or when it snows. There are other tasks that they do, so it's important to show you what those tasks are. But back to the question at hand, if you look at the spreadsheet itself, the first section is the full-time, part-time salaries combined. You'll notice that 2013 is significantly less than 14-15 or 15-16, and that's because that was a startup year and it was just getting geared up, and there was a learning curve involved, and we had since added more equipment and more men or personnel. We have ladies too, excuse me. But I think the interesting point there is that if you look at the total salary and benefits for 14-15 versus 15-16, they're virtually dead even. It's changed a little bit, but those costs have not gone up. I think it's within $2,000 if you add those numbers together. The contractual services is probably a little more interest for some of you. The first year, that $85,000 represented a company that we contracted with to take care of our athletic fields. We weren't geared up at the time to take care of our football and baseball fields, softball fields, soccer fields, so we outsourced that. We, since that time, added the personnel with appropriate training. We took it back in-house. And you'll see in subsequent years that number has dropped significantly. I suspect the bulk of that is for tree service, because every once in a while we have to take trees down as weather dependent. However, I expect that number to go up significantly in the next few years because of the emerald ash borer. So we're going to have to start looking at our tree canopy really close, and there will be a lot of trees that will probably come down. We'll replace them with new ones, but there's not much we can do. The cost to chemically treat those trees is exorbitant. It can be $4,000 to $5,000 per tree, and it is no guarantee that it will live. Fuel has leveled off, actually dropped. I think in 14-15 we had a pretty wet season, so we had a lot of tractor fuel, a lot more mowing going on. And that's reflected by the part-time number up above, too, because we had more part-time help and a lot more hours out there mowing. The equipment depreciation is something we put in there just to show our equipment starting to age, so we realize that there's a cost associated with that. Supplies have dropped significantly from the first year to the third year. I credit that to IPM. Less pesticides, less fertilizer. There's been a lot less purchases, so that number has dropped significantly. And I understand, I learned this weekend that Director Hemingway thought that maybe we should take a look back to the form that we used several years ago and comparing cost to outsource. And the reason we didn't is because we've added a significant number of duties. We've added acreage. There's been inflation. There's been weather changes, and we've added the IPM policy. But having said that, I took a look at it, and back in 2013, we projected our original cost when we brought lawn care back in service in-house would be about $2.1 million for the last 3 years. We actually spent $2.2 million if you add those 3 lines up, and that's about a 4.9% increase over what we projected. However, if you really want to go back and compare it to outsourcing, we projected that cost to be $2.5 million. So we've actually outperformed outsourcing by nearly 12%. So I think it's a significant number. So with that, I would answer any questions you might have.
The $2.5 million projected for outsourcing, that does not include the numerous other things that are grounds crews.
It does not. That was just the contracts that we had in place.
Okay.
I mean,
I'll take that back. We did go back when we did that original evaluation, and we did talk about things like snow plowing and additional duties. So I think there may be some in that, Brian.
Just a quick question about the numbers. Can you tell us how they break down in terms of where the money comes from? Is it all general fund?
No, Salaries, benefits is all general fund. Contracted services and equipment supplies, a lot of that comes from Pebble.
And the breakdown would have been different when we contracted out in what way?
When you contracted out, you would have had more Pebble, less general fund.
When you contracted out, you have
No, it'd
less.
be the other way around.
No, if you contracted,
Out, it'd be more general fund, Dwayne.
you can pay for contracted services out of Pebble, or you can use the general fund. But how did quality care get paid?
All general.
Okay.
Say
But
again?
you can use Pebble. I stand corrected.
Okay, thanks.
The one, yeah, and, yeah, that was very good. And I think it'd be important to have the breakdown as far as what our general fund costs are and what our Pebble funds costs are that way. The reason why I requested we use the same format is because when I look at the first one we received from David Duty, and then the revised one that we got 11/23 of 15, and then the one we get today, none of the grand totals of these three papers are the same. And to say that we're keeping track of and longitudinally how we're going, this doesn't even jive with this one.
Right, and I caught that as well, but my answer to that would be that these are accurate numbers that have been taken from the books after they've been closed. Some of those numbers were before the fiscal years were done, and some of them were estimates. So I think this is a more accurate reflection of what actually happened.
But I'm assuming these numbers here were from closed books too, when this report was
Not all of
produced.
them. I think some of those were estimates on those pages. There are projections. So we can go, if you would like, we'll take the time, go back and compare, but I would say that this page that you got today is an accurate reflection of the true cost associated with ground care
Well,
and the extra duties.
I just think we do it, we standardize our forms on other reports and everything like that. I think it's important going forward. We're not changing the format and it stay the same. So when I have constituents come to me and they say, look, nothing's, it's, give us the confidence that the numbers don't change when we've got closed out years. It should be the same when we look back historically at 2013 and 2014. Those numbers shouldn't change in 2015.
Yeah, we've heard your message. It's just a short turnaround time. So we can go back and rework this, and then I would ask the business office to review all those numbers to make sure that they're correct.
Well, it speaks to the getting into the annual cadence at the same time every year when the books have closed versus sometimes we were looking at this in process. But
yeah,
Dwayne, I just want to say every time we've looked at this, it's been a savings project, and I fully believe that, and it has freed up general fund dollars. And the other thing, and you know this, is when I visited schools, I was surprised how many unsolicited comments I got that, the quality was better. So I think it's amazing what you picked up and the crew has picked up in the last 2 years, and IPM and everything else, and just providing great service. So thank you to the crew and everybody who's doing great work for the district.
we appreciate those comments, and I'd like to echo that because I think the staff that we have in place is second to none. They're all professionals. They've all done their training. They've all got their certifications, and they care about what they're doing, and they care about kids. So I think they're doing a great job. So I appreciate that.
Thanks, Dwayne. Any other discussion before we move on? Can we now get an update from our integrated pest management from Dave McKenzie? Okay.
And I will be brief. The IPM task force met again last night, and thank you to Directors Hemingway and Kirschling for attending and supporting us. Dr. Kamyar and Cheyenne's Good Neighbor Iowa Kickoff event took place over the weekend. Our district was the largest school district that was mentioned, along with a number of parks in Iowa City, Des Moines, Dubuque, and Cedar Falls. So we're off to a good start there. We talked last night about progress we made in communications. In some cases, we've added or improved our methods of communicating what we're doing to parents and the public. In other cases, we're documenting or formalizing things we were already doing informally so that we can continue to do those consistently. The main things that we have left to do are to complete our operating procedure document. Ben Graham has a very good IPM program document for grounds. I, on the other hand, just have bits and pieces of an indoor IPM program that I need to complete. Pieces of it are floating around being tried, but we need to finalize that, and then it all needs to be tied together with procedures for staff training, record keeping, and notifications. And some of that already exists, and it's been reviewed. Some of it still needs to be written. So that's my summer homework assignment. I plan to use some of the task force members as resources over the summer to finish the IPM plan, but I don't plan to hold any task force meetings over the summer.
So
I see a question from Brian.
No, not a question. Just it's looking like Jeff Lauer, who's helped chair the committee, that task force, right? I'm sorry, did you mention this? Sorry, May 27th, he's zeroing in on May 27th as a strong potential.
Is that what he's shooting for
Which
an Iowa City event?
Yes, which happens to be West High's graduation, so hopefully we can keep those separate, because I think it's a morning event, and West High graduation is usually...
Yes.
Right.
Okay.
He and I were going back and forth today.
As long as we can...
Yep.
Okay.
West High's at 7, it's in the evening. And what they're trying to do is something at the farmer's market, which would be from 7 to noon or whatever, so.
And this would be just a further announcement of CAMYAR's Good Neighbor campaign?
Yes, and recognition of Iowa City Community School District's work on this as with the committee and with the community. This is hopefully a very important, positive event, and Jeff wants us to know that he's working hard to recognize the work done, because it hasn't always been easy.
And that's very true, and we appreciate it.
Yeah, and I'd like to thank Dave and the staff and everyone in the community that has attended these meetings. There's been many. It's been a large group.
Absolutely.
And Jeffrey Lauer's leading of it, and we've had, oh gosh, I would forget all the people that came in and out with the district and helped with this along the way. But it's important, and we're making progress. I feel we still have a ways to go in that, and we're working on it. And we had discussions about even bringing new blood into the group, which I think is a good idea to get that. And we do have, our spray-free areas. We were given maps and things like that, so we will have areas. This is for Shimmick going forward. Even though in those spray-free areas we are spraying trees. And that's something we'll work on going forward on that. But we are making positive progress forward, and we'll just continue working on that. And I know we've made a lot of strides on the inside of buildings, and from continuously spraying to monitoring and that, and our drop-off there is phenomenal, and that's tremendous, and that was a community effort working on that. So I look forward to this thing on the 27th.
And this whole thing, the central factor is that this is a culture shift, right? It's not that that things are drastically different. It's education, information, communication, more or less, to summarize. Educating to not just do the knee-jerk reaction, which is to spray or whatever, but to investigate the root cause, to try non-toxic means, multiple non-toxic means, to document, and only have a comprehensive plan that isn't just going to the knee-jerk reaction. And the other thing that was commented yesterday was the relationship between how we're changing what we do outside and how it affects what occurs inside of our buildings. So really excited about where we're going with this, and I agree with Director Hemingway that there's always room for improvement and room to progress. But this is exciting, and I'm glad that CAMYAR is excited about what we're doing here. he's been a very strong influence on helping educate us, as long as Mark Schauer too.
Right.
Discussion? Questions?
I just have, I'm on the outside of all this, and that's why it's helpful to get an update from the committee. And I guess, and you can educate me, but it seems like we're zeroing in on a policy that, you know, will maybe treat athletic fields differently than other parts of the outdoor areas in terms of whether we might end up spraying them. Am I misunderstanding that?
No, that's true. We're doing more treatment on athletic fields than anywhere else, probably.
Yeah, and so, I mean, and I understand that politics is about compromise, but a part of me just wonders, I mean, is the stuff harmful or isn't it? I mean, it's kind of funny to think that we're spraying it in one place and not another if we're worried about it's sort of hazardous to human health. So, I mean, how do I square those things?
Well, first of all, the younger the child is, the more susceptible they might be to contact with some of the chemicals. So the athletic fields we're talking about are for older kids. The second issue is overriding safety issues. We have kind of competing safety issues here. We need to keep weeds and other pests out of our athletic fields in order to provide a safe play surface for them. Without some of the assistance of the pesticides, we're not able to do that. So there's a lot of research going on in the area, but there aren't a lot of good answers yet for being able to do this without some of the tools that we're using.
Do we make any effort to solicit input from the parents of the kids who are rolling around on this stuff?
Well,
there's been, we've had those discussions. We've even had comments about ricocheted baseballs off of dandelions, which I thought was a little bit out there. But our goal, Chris, we're trying. Ultimately, we'd love to get to that point, and we're working on it. And believe me, I'm pushing that. And I had a proposal similar to Chemiar's that had a sunset on a 6-year period where we would hope to reach a chemical-free on our competitive athletic fields as well. But they're doing processes of overseeding and fertilization to try and do that. There's also grub issues that can cause the turf to be loose underfoot, and that can cause a safety issue and things like that. And one thing from being on the IPM committee I learned is that we had to spray the sports turf field so blown-in seeds don't germinate and cause an issue. So we're looking at that. There definitely were community members that were raising concerns that way. So it is, and we had very well represented strong athletic director participation in this process with Terry Coleman and
Scott
Kibbe, thank you, being involved. So we're looking at everything we can to diminish that, but that's a, like I was say, this is all a work in progress, and we're trying to come up with the best practices.
I appreciate that you're doing it. I'm just, like I say, I'm starting from scratch with a lot of these questions.
Yeah.
So were we once upon a time.
Yeah, exactly.
It's been, what, 16, 17 months?
It's been a while.
It's been quite a while. Right.
Okay. Well,
One funny thing, the goats on the go. I just want to say, living outside of city limits, that I know somebody who is now hiring goats on the go.
I knew that you were going to bring goats up.
Somebody is hiring goats on the go because they're upset about their garlic mustard problem. So. Okay.
Okay.
That's
Thank
bad.
you so much for all your contributions. Thank you, Dave.
Thank you.
Computer purchase agreement, Adam.
Well, could I just make a motion to approve the computer purchase bid from Sterling? And then with a second, we can discuss it.
Second.
Thank you.
All right, I'll give you a brief overview here. I don't want to waste too much time since I've provided a lot of information already, but certainly open to any questions that you have. Just a quick overview. This purchase includes all device category purchases for next year's device deployments. That includes high school one-to-one devices, elementary student devices, as well as staff-assigned devices. The agreement also includes licensing along with certain configuration deployment services. Really quick, some of the basics. Total cost for this purchase is roughly 2.401 million. I do want to note that a large portion of that, and this is dealt with in the next item, about 62% of that will be proposed is to be financed using a 4-year lease. The remainder would be purchased outright. That leaves a cost for this year of about 1.292 million. This is pretty much in line with what our costs would have been on a per year basis with our 6-year replacement cycle. So just to give you a sense of perspective on that, because we do not have a balanced deployment right now with our 6-year cycle, replacing 6-year-old devices alone, sort of a status quo deployment, we'd be looking at a purchase of about $1.5 million tonight. So this is actually less than what that would have been. And sets us up for more stability in terms of spending going forward, primarily with the use of that lease for a portion of it. As with all of the projects that I brought before you, this one went through a complete and formal bid process. We solicited, open bids from vendors, certainly with an RFP that defined our technical specifications as determined by the folks in my department. This bid was about $75,000 less than the next lowest bid, about $600,000 less than the highest bid. One thing I do want to note about costs is one-to-one in particular, even next year as we bring the junior highs online, will cost less than this year and future years. Because we're bringing 4 grades online at once, we offset some of that cost by using the Chromebooks that had already been deployed last year to the high schools. But this is still a larger purchase in the future. That'll be a smaller purchase on an annual basis. Really quick, I do want to speak to the fact that I'm excited about the opportunities that this purchase presents. It's really a culmination of years of work that began far before I was here when the one-to-one, not only one-to-one, but really technology planning conversation began, looking at what our needs were in the classroom, what the needs were of our students in terms of access to technology. I'm excited about what this will do to create opportunities for our students and teachers. It's clear that since I arrived in the district, the #1 request and comment that I get from all areas of our school community, but particularly from teachers, relates to device access and adequacy of our existing technology. This program, as it has come, and really it's 3 programs, again, like I mentioned, the one-to-one, elementary devices, and then staff devices. As these have come closer to fruition, I've received overwhelmingly positive feedback. Our curriculum coordinators, a group of them sent out a survey to secondary teachers, and 70% indicated on a scale of 1 to 5 that they were either 4s or 5 in terms of their excitement level for this one-to-one initiative, for instance. Only 4% indicated a 1 in that category. So to me, I look at this as something that addresses a lot of our concerns. There are obviously a lot of details that I'm happy to speak to as needed.
Just like to make a couple comments on this. When we were at the last legislative meeting that we had here with our local legislators in the area, other area school districts, it was disappointing to be sitting there as the Iowa City Community School District and have to listen to other districts talk about how they've been one-to-one for over 4 years, and we're just now trying to catch up. So I did reach out to College Community as well as Clear Creek Amanda, since they're a neighboring district, to do some research so I wasn't rubber stamping again, as it's been claimed, to make sure that what they were doing had a positive impact. And just to touch on a couple of things that they said is that they both said, is that they're trying to level the playing field in their district for every student, regardless of socioeconomic background. And one of the things that the commenter said was that maybe students who didn't have internet access at home would take the computer home with no internet access, but there's a grant, correct, from Sprint that would allow us to have
That is
hotspots
correct.
for all students that don't have it. These computers also allow those students to work at home, even if they don't have access to the internet. They can save their work, and then when they are connected again, it will do that. One other thing is this is just at the high school level and the junior high level. And when you're talking about elementary school, when you say things like 2 to 1, that's just having more devices available at school, so they don't have to have people waiting on the carts to come to the room.
Correct, yep.
And I just want us, again, I think this can be a very positive thing, being 1-to-1. I've seen it in action at Southeast when I've been there for Share Your School Day. I've talked a lot with Matt about this, and I think it's going to be a positive thing. So I am looking forward to it. Now, there are some people that have asked about a privacy or usage policy, and that's been sent to Policy and Governance. We just haven't been able to cover it yet. We've had to cover some other things multiple times, and I hope that we will get to that before the school year starts. So I'm excited for this, and I'm really excited for everyone to be able to have a computer at the secondary level. So again, I will be voting yes for this, and not because the district brought it to me, but because I think it's a good thing.
Well, I just want to add to that, Paul, that, the approval is the end of the journey. We started this journey years ago.
Oh, I understand.
And I always laugh when you talk rubber stamp, because we drove this starting years ago with our technology master plan. We would have loved, previous boards would have loved to have gotten a 1-to-1 sooner, because we've seen the benefits across Iowa and across the nation, and it directly impacts to educational outcomes, but we didn't have the infrastructure to support it. And so we've had to do the work to get the infrastructure to support it. And Adam, I don't think you could have presented this any better. I mean, the link to academic outcomes is outstanding. The work you've done to keep the cost down is outstanding. The approach to, the life cycle management of the technology and bringing a platform completely same technology all at the same time is the way to do it. It's just easier for our students and staff. And I don't know, I couldn't be any more pleased with this outcome. And again, it's not just arriving on our desk tonight. We've been working on this for years, and finally we're getting to the point where we're getting near the end. Now, we got a couple more years to go, right? Mm-hmm. To get really where we want to get. But thank you for the work you're doing. It's outstanding.
And I think we saw this on maybe some of the other bidding we had with IT equipment, but in the future, if it's possible, if we just get like all the bids, even the unsuccessful ones, just so that way anyone who views the document can see, okay, it wasn't just one bid, it's multiple bids, that type of a thing.
Certainly.
And that, and and at the work session, I raised some questions on this, and then it was, we brag about how high our test scores and everything are that way, and this, and we're supposed to be making evidence-based decisions and everything. Is there overwhelming data that when you go 1-to-1 that all of a sudden our test scores are going to go up 2 points on the ACT, and we're going to have so many more 36s and things like that, and more kids going to Stanford?
No, is my quick answer, but I'll elaborate a little bit. There is not overwhelming data that 1-to-1 programs, uniquely influence things like test scores, and that's true of, as most programs that we have here in the district. There is a lot of evidence that ties, solid research-based evidence that's been duplicated throughout multiple studies that does tie 1-to-1 initiatives and access initiatives even more broadly, just giving access to students, access to technology to students, to outputs including student engagement, increased attendance, growth in 21st century skills, growth in STEAM performance, science, technology, engineering, arts, math, areas like that. And then the other thing that we can tie very closely is the fact that 1-to-1 in particular perhaps serves to facilitate innovative instructional methods that we know already, because I have teachers banging down my door oftentimes to want to use some of them. 1-to-1 really enables some of these approaches. Just some examples that I would give are blended learning or flipped classrooms, where you sort of flip the classroom paradigm and use the in-class component to really facilitate discussion between teachers and students. Inquiry-driven instruction, which is a primary focus, for instance, within the next generation science standards. Other areas, decentralized classrooms, individualized and self-paced learning. These are all areas that are facilitated and made more possible through increased technology access. So we know it has impacts. Will it raise our ACT scores by 2 points? If it did, great. But that's something that would be very difficult to tease out the effects, since obviously we have so many other programs going on at the same time.
Do these one-to-ones work with our third district goal about equitable environments?
They do, I believe. One of the big components of one-to-one, when I think about why one-to-one, is that access component. And again, particularly, that's one of the reasons why when I first started, within my first week here, one of the things I started doing was looking for opportunities to provide access not just here at school through devices, but also looking to provide access through home. And that's something that we've applied. I feel like I keep saying this, but it's because their deadline for announcing has not come. I believe it's May 4th, but for the Sprint grant program that would provide access points for all of our students who are qualified for free or reduced lunch. I've been told by Sprint that we are very likely to receive that, but again, the date that they send out that confirmation is May 4th. I've already begun to have some discussions with other companies, US Cellular in particular, so that if that were not to come to fruition, which I think it will, but if it were not, we may have some other fallback opportunities that we can use as well to provide that outside of school access. There are some other innovative approaches that have been used that I've looked into.
And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying computers at all are taking the place of quality teaching. You can't replace a quality teacher, but it gives those teachers an opportunity to provide them with options, a way to teach if they so choose.
Can you talk a little bit about how it might influence our, what's the right word, curricular materials? Can't say textbooks anymore. Is it going to now lead us into a world where we're not buying books necessarily? Like somebody can tell me a little bit about the science curriculum that's currently being planned, and whether that's going to be all electronic, ebook, or?
Yep, sir, I'll address the first question. Certainly, I do not think this is going to replace textbook or any other book purchases on the whole,
or I don't mean entirely.
Or even in large part, is what I was going to say. And Diane's not here tonight, or she could speak to this as well, but I've had lots of conversations with her about it. We're really looking at one-to-one as something that's not designed to offset costs and, turn to electronic texts for providing information to students that they need that normally would be provided in a textbook or other similar resource. That said, it does give our curricular planning groups an option. Right now, that's not even an option for us to consider as it relates to curricular choices, because we don't have universal student access to these technologies. So we're looking at one-to-one as something that creates an option, where if it's an e-version of a textbook, or if it's something like through Discovery Education, it's an all-digital curricular offering, we can actually consider that and entertain those possibilities. The most common scenario that I would see over the coming 4 or 5 years is probably the majority of our text selections will involve the purchase of an actual book, but that also includes a digital, primarily online component. So that's something that we've been working to plan for, both in terms of the one-to-one, being able to facilitate that at the secondary levels, and then also on the back end, making sure that we have the infrastructure so that we can seamlessly provide student accounts to access those materials and work with the various publishers so that we don't have a hodgepodge of teachers having to take their incredibly valuable time to manage user accounts and things like that. So I look at it as an opportunity that's giving us, but I would be stunned if we see even a majority of our curriculum going to all digital anytime in the coming years.
Do you happen to know about the selection of science materials for the new?
I was not involved in the process directly. I'm aware of some of the details related to that, but I can't speak to it directly. I wasn't in any of those meetings.
Adam, just super fast, how are you determining who gets the yogas and who doesn't?
So in terms of the staff computer deployment?
Oh, or the yoga's not going to the
Correct,
students?
yep. The student Chromebooks will all be the same model.
Okay, I was
Yep.
going to say,
Yep.
that could create
Yep,
some
there's
issues.
there's a component, as you know, a list of different devices. For staff, we're offering a limited choose your own device option, which includes a convertible Windows tablet as well as a conventional laptop, just for staff though.
Okay, yep. Good
Yeah.
move.
Yep.
Okay. Are we ready for?
Well, I've got just a couple more quick ones.
Mhm.
There was a, we switched alarm companies a while back to save $400 on a annual contract, and we spent $30,000 to change all the equipment out. You say that this will not offset cost. Are we going to expect, I mean, I'm assuming you would tell us if it was, but I mean, is this the type of a thing that all of a sudden we get these this year and then next year, we got to rewire classrooms for outlets for chargers and things like this, or our losses are such and it's another $1 or $2 million a year to maintain this thing and go forward?
No, I don't believe so. Most of the projects, and frankly, most of these projects were projects we needed to do anyway. One-to-one will increase the number of devices we support in the district, but not dramatically so. So most of the projects to improve our infrastructure to handle one-to-one have already been approved by the board. And those were the network core upgrade project, I think from late 2016 that I brought to the board, or secondary level wireless upgrade, handful of other networking upgrade projects. So that's really improved our infrastructure to the point that we now have an adequate infrastructure in terms of an enterprise network with an adequate backbone, adequate wireless infrastructure and distribution throughout the district. The only additional costs, to be totally open, the only additional cost that's related to one-to-one, although not necessitated by it at all, will be something that I'll bring to you likely in June, which is a contract for a piece of software called Canvas, which is a learning management system. Most districts use learning management systems. We currently do not have one, but this would be for junior high and high school students and teachers, and essentially the cost would offset the production of printed planners, is really how we're looking at it. But that's the only expense that I envision bringing in the future related to this.
And existing computer labs and things like that in the schools, is this going to free those spaces up, or will they still exist? So we'll have both, maintaining both school-based computers and the Chromebook?
It'll free up most of the labs, and that's made possible by our implementation, also previously board approved, of infrastructure to support virtual application delivery of virtual Windows applications over the internet to the Chromebooks. And that's allowed us to pull out almost all of our general purpose labs from West High School and City. The buildings have had some discretion as we go into year one in terms of which labs they'd like to keep, and they're both keeping some of those general purpose. In terms of specialty labs, so thinking industrial technology, some art labs, publication, newspaper publications, music, there are a handful of labs that we will still keep for the time being. My hope is going forward that we'll see that, you know, the virtualized application infrastructure combined with larger displays perhaps available in those spaces will offset the need for those as well. But that's not something that we wanted to take the risk on pulling out right away. So some of the literature I provided indicated cost savings in terms of reduction of high school labs this coming year and then junior high labs starting the following year. And that's based upon the reduction just of a portion of those general purpose labs. So we are pulling some computers out of the buildings rather than, you know, continuing to have all the labs we have now and replacing those computers and ending up with a 0.6 to 1 ratio or something absurd.
I'm just going to suggest we need to pick up the pace if we want to finish.
Sure, if I could just add one really quick comment. One example of that, Director Hemingway, is the new Liberty High School. So if you're in there and you're looking off the library, there were going to be 2 computer labs in there. We're now going to use those as tile classrooms. So those are the classrooms where kids can come in. They'll be able to plug their computers in through a hub, see it on a screen at the end of the table, where they'll work in small group space. So we're already working on that as we move out to the new high school.
If we're not making the same use of those computer labs, is that going to affect the capacity figures that we put on our buildings?
Those will wind up being flexible workspaces, just like you would find in the small group spaces that are currently at the library. These will just be designed for you to bring your students in and do collaborative work. So that'll be designed for students to have easier access to content on other students' computers through those display techniques.
Okay. I'll be real quick. We talked through most of this during the work session that we had. You know, I'm not totally one way or the other on some of the issues in there, but the privacy policy part does bother me. I don't know what'll come out of P&G, and given I know how long it takes things to get through P&G, I probably won't be sitting here when it comes out. The fact that you know, we don't know whether these might be the last saved dollars that we have for a while, or some of the last dollars that we have not already allocated for a while, is enough to make me a little reluctant.
Using saved dollars on roughly 6,000 students a year is a good spend of the saved dollars.
Okay, are we ready for a vote? Okay.
Online voting is open. All votes have been cast and the motion carries with Directors Deloach, Hemingway, Rotland, Kirschling, Lynch, and Ressler voting yea and Director Liebig voting nay.
Okay. Adam, you're still up?
I'm going to pass this one to Les.
Do you want to,
Actually, the leasing one is next, and I'll jump in there, if that's okay.
just before you start?
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the lease offering from U.S. Bank Corp. Government Leasing and Finance.
I'll second it.
As Adam has alluded to, this is the financing for the staff computers only. That will be on a 4-year cycle. We'll put all of those staff machines on the same generation of machines, as opposed to, how many do you have now?
Currently, we support 23 different models of staff device in the district.
So not only will this provide efficiencies for those, it'll put everybody that can work together much more easily and that type of thing. We sent out an RFP. I believe we had 6 different vendors that we were aware of that did this sort of leasing, or actually a loan in the case of one of the local banks that participated and responded to us. U.S. Bank Corp., the recommended leasing company, also has a state of Iowa contract for all of their leasing equipment, not only technology, but skid loaders and that type of thing. So they worked for, they're very experienced, they understand the state of Iowa as well. I spoke with the executive director at the state of Iowa, and she indicated no issues with the contract that they had with them. So the annual cost is about $389,000, and that is funded with the SAVE dollars, which are part of the annual allocation that we make for technology. If you recall, we brought to you at the end of March the PEPAL life cycle. At the bottom of that also included the technology allocation for SAVE in there. So this is part of that annual allocation.
Any discussion? If not, I think we're ready to vote.
Online voting is open. All votes have been cast and the motion carries with Directors Deloach, Hemingway, Rotland, Kirschling, Lynch, and Ressler voting yea and Director Liebig voting nay.
Okay, now Adam. Sorry. Internet and firewall agreements.
I move we approve the ICN Internet Service and Firewall Contract.
Second.
All right, again, I'll be brief on this one. This is the contract for our 3-year contract for internet service to the district. Just a couple quick details. We are currently on a 1 gigabit bandwidth contract. Every day we max out that connection at about 9 a.m. and it stays maxed out until about 3 p.m. So this is inadequate. In comparison,
Problematic.
it does seem problematic.
Right, during school.
Because our 1 gigabit connection is our limit right now, it becomes difficult to estimate what our true needs are at this point. We're very comfortable with the 3 gigabit figure. for two reasons. We compared it to two standards. One was the standard for other UEN districts, and at 1 gigabit per about 4,700 students, that puts us almost exactly in line with UEN standards for the coming year throughout the state. And then State Educational Technology Directors Association actually recommends 1 gigabit per 1,000 students by 2017-18. This obviously does not approach that, which would be a 14 gigabit connection. I don't think that's something we need, but it's, again, this is well within their recommendation level as well. There is one major change that I do want to point out with this contract compared to our previous internet contracts, which is that we are taking advantage of a new ICN service that provides firewall service as well as internet. Firewall is a huge cost for us on an ongoing basis, both for the hardware and licensing of that hardware. The ICN solution is an, not to get into details, apps-based next-generation solution. It's state-of-the-art, company that's very well respected and rated well. And so after full E-rate discounts, which for us will be about 60%, this monthly cost, which is listed at $11,487, actually drops to $4,594. Again, we bid this project, and in the future I'll provide the competing bids as well, Director Hemingway. But we bid this project, and this ICN proposal came in more than $1,000 under the other proposals we received.
Just wondering, so this is general fund. Is there some reason why it's not PEPAL or SAFE?
Correct, it is general fund. I would defer to Les with regard to why it's allocated in that way. That's something that's been the case prior to this year.
I don't believe it meets the expenditure type for PEPAL or SAVE out funding, so it has to be general fund.
Okay, thanks.
Ready for a vote? Kim, I think we're ready for a vote.
Online voting is open. All votes have been cast and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
Now we have our Appendix 9 approval request.
Thank you. We have 5 projects this evening with 13 different approvals. The first one is a 10-plex that we want to move from Lucas to Southeast this summer. Step 2 is a design contract with MMS for $34,000. They've done all the design work on our previous installations of the 10-plex, and there's some economy of scale there, and they've done a good job, so we're recommending that we just keep that in progress. Step 3, 4, and 5 are the actual drawings. They're pretty simple. There are a lot of duplication. Those drawings are available at my office if you care to see them. And are also asking you to approve Step 6. So I think you may have done as part of the consent, but the public hearing would be held May 9th, and the bid opening for this project would be May 11th. We've worked with the principal at Southeast and with the associate director for high school programs, and I think we've got a pretty good location for this. It won't interfere with any possible additions in the future. At Shimmick, we have a Step 7 award of contract, and this is a contract for the demolition of the existing playground, the regrading of the site, and the installation of the new equipment. We got 4 bids. They range from $133,500 to $150,200, and the low bidder was Bakken State Excavating of Iowa City at $133,500. And this contractor's worked on several of our projects. We have no issues with him. The third one is a physical plant ADA restroom and entrance project. We're asking for the design work to be approved. Steps 3, 4, and 5. I actually have those with me here tonight. They were handed to me this afternoon. And we're also asking for a Step 6 public hearing May 9th and a bid on May 25th. I know there's been some question about what that project may entail. And when we did the nutrition services addition, it did not include restrooms. We do have a person who has needs for ADA restroom. We have needs for other staff in the physical plant to have access to ADA restrooms. It's probably the least ADA compliant building in the district, but we're getting there. And then the other part is to improve the entrances to the physical plant to make them, 1, more secure, and 2, more energy efficient. We think that a lot of energy is lost through single door entries. This would provide double door entryways in 2 locations, plus improve the windows, which are really inefficient, and again, improve the security and the visibility of the people entering the building. So that's that project. The nutritional services freezer project, which we're finally ready to put to rest. Step 9 is a recommendation for substantial completion, which would release the retainage of $24,871.40. And step 10 is to accept the project. All the punch list items have been completed, and the project is performing as expected. The last one is safety and security, Phase 6B, which is the work that's being done at City High. It's a step 8 change request for $14,655. When we got into the project, we realized that there were a lot of doors that need to be replaced and some additional door hardware, and that's what the bulk of that's for. So with that, I'd answer any questions you might have.
If there's no questions, entertaining a motion?
Well, can I, sure, go
I
ahead.
just figured we put a motion so we can discuss.
That's a good point.
We approve the Appendix 9 request as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
I just want to jump in and say, you know, some of these things reflect projects that I voted against earlier on, the physical plant restroom, the Shimmick thing. I'm not about to keep track of all those things as they make their way through the Appendix 9 process, but I'm going to vote yes on it, but just, I don't mean that to be support for the earlier decisions that we made.
I've got, on the ADA restrooms and everything at the fiscal plant, and no one's going to begrudge that, you know, we need to have ADA bathrooms, but my concern is that on a first floor building that has our carpenters and our electricians and our tradesmen, why the heck can't we just put in the doors ourselves and the rails and the necessary fixtures and go on instead of if you pay for the design cost or whatever, but we do it ourselves, especially when it's our building.
Yeah. Well, a lot of times it's the nature of the installation that's being done. Those entryways are storefront entryways, and our guys really aren't qualified to do those. It's done by a glazier, not a carpenter. So it's a little different installation. It's more of a commercial door application. There's one at the front of the existing nutrition services office now. When you come into this building, you go through a commercial door application, and our guys just aren't that experienced with the doors. In terms of the plumbing, and even with the project that was done for nutritional services, our guys installed the heat work. We did a lot of the carpentry work. We did hang the doors. We did do the cabinets. We did a lot of the finishes in there. We did the painting. So we have done a lot of that work at the physical plant. And I have not precluded that we might not do it for some of this work as well. I think the basic plumbing, we need to have a floor removed. There needs to be a sewer line run in. And we just don't have the manpower to do some of that heavy plumbing work.
And I'm sorry, I'm kind of jumping around here, but I was just trying to keep up with you going through. On that Shimmick playground demolition and installation and everything, that's including the existing play structure where it is, where the 10-plex is going, correct? Now, is there going to be additional charges for the grading for the 10-plex? Or this includes the grading for the 10-plex?
Well, no, the intent was to remove the structure that's there, the wooden structure that we all know about, and to provide the basic grading for the 10-plex. I'm not saying there won't be some excavation for footings and foundations when we can move the 10-plex, but this will basically put it within a tolerance of 6 inches of the final grade.
And just to be clear, the 10-plex is going to go at the end of the asphalt area or extending onto the asphalt area?
The 10-plex goes where the existing wooden play structure is.
Oh, beautiful, okay.
Yeah.
With kind of like a ramp, similar to like
There'll
what
be
they
a
have at Lucas.
switchback ramp to get them back up to that upper level.
Right,
Yeah.
because I remember when you put it at Lucas, it was on the sledding hill.
Yes.
Right, okay.
Well, and on the Shimmick playground, the Miracle Certified ADA plans for Shimmick, there's the two structures. There's the one structure, the Area 2, and then the Area 1. These are the final site plans.
Those are the final layouts for the playground equipment. If you look at the provided site plan by MMS, it'll show you the exact locations, and those go off next to the asphalt surfaces that are there now.
Okay. And can we get copies of the second bidder's site plans on the Shimmick playground?
Well, the bidders didn't do the site plans. We hired MMS to do the site plans. We had two bidders on the actual playground equipment itself, And those have been provided previously, but I'll certainly get them to you again.
Okay, and well, because there was originally it was gonna be where the existing playground was, and then it moved to the back of the school, so there should be two different.
Right, well, yeah, and those were concepts that were done by the two companies. I wouldn't call them completed plans by any means until they.
Okay, well, can we get those?
We'll certainly try and resurrect some of that.
When we get the ADA compliance certification, is that an independent person certifying that to us, or is that someone affiliated with the person who won the bid?
Yeah, I think these manufacturers are under some pretty strict regulations and a lot of scrutiny, and they have to follow, the American Society of Testing Materials, the ADA regulations, and a couple other ones that they have to provide. So they actually have compliance officers on staff that certify those plans, and that's
We're
we
just
asked
kind of
them.
taking them at their word then that it's ADA compliant.
Well, certainly their reputation and their license to produce that equipment is at risk if they falsify information.
I appreciate the extensive site plans by MMS about the demolition of the existing play structure and the preparation for the new playground area. I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 designations. 105, which is protect existing trees. I see a couple trees that are being relocated as well. The designation to remove number 104. Can you? I know it's in a kind of woody, overgrown area behind the building, but what the tree that's going to? I know that the tree. We're very sensitive about the trees at Shimmick. Bottom line, including the 7-tree forest. Yes, I'm going to say that. My question is with the one that's designated 104. What's the status of that tree?
What page are you referring to? Do you know?
Page 2 of the Shimmick Playground renovation MMS site plan.
So 104 is actually removing undergrowth and woody debris.
Okay.
There's a lot of brush out there. We got some of it cleaned up with the goats. That's probably the same area that a lot of those goats were in.
It is. It is indeed.
But it's still there. I mean, the bushes are still there. So that's what it's referring to.
Okay.
I think the large trees have been identified. I think there was a lot of bad information that was out there about what was going to be done and what wasn't going to be done. And I think this set of plans that we've given you tonight, all of it is pretty definitive of exactly what we intend to do at Shimmick.
I'm seeing a lot of mature trees that are protected.
Right. And I think there's a couple of those, and Ben, correct me if I'm wrong, they're going to be saved.
Thank you.
Okay, I will entertain a vote. Can we please? Thank you.
Online voting is open. All votes have been cast and the motion carries with Directors Liebig, Deloach, Rotland, Kirschling, Lynch, and Ressler voting yea and Director Hemingway voting nay.
Okay, can we look at the items from the consent agenda? We had 4, 9, 10, 12, 13, those that pulled them. Go ahead.
Yes. On 4, it was the meet and confer group. And normally that's something we have a discussion in closed session prior to, we have a presentation and a discussion before we have a
Technically an
vote.
exempt session, I think.
Excuse me.
Technically an exempt session, I
excuse me.
think. I might be wrong.
Right.
Yeah, I would make a motion that we schedule an exempt session on that before we approve that.
I would second that motion.
Exempt session, you may just want to clean up the motion, but exempt session to review,
To
meet and
review
defer.
the meet and confer settlements. Is that clear enough? Yeah.
You good with the second?
Yes, second.
Can we ready to vote?
Second.
Sorry. It's second already. You can discuss it.
Yeah, I just was question, so if we vote to do the exempt session, are we approving the other ones too, or?
We will, that'd be the next.
It'll have to be a
Steve, any
separate,
concerns with that?
separate motion.
Any concerns with that? I don't.
No.
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay, you ready? Sorry.
Yes, for the first motion.
Online voting is open.
I'm not seeing it. I don't know if, oh, there it is.
Can we have another motion for the?
All
Oh,
votes have
sorry,
been
go ahead.
cast, and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
So I move we approve the support staff agenda and the certified staff agenda as
Second.
presented.
Second.
Vote. I think Chris Liebig might have had the second. As soon as Kim finishes typing, we'll be ready.
She will be here for a while, so.
Wait till the meeting's over. Who was the, I'm sorry, who was the motion?
I made the motion and Director Liebig seconded it.
Thank you. All right. Online voting is open. All votes have been cast, and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
Item 9.
So the Forecast 5 renewal, just reading it over, and again, if the bond had already passed, I would probably not think twice about approving this, but it is coming out of, I forget, Saver Pepple. It's not a huge amount of money, but from the description of the cover memo, it seems like something we've been living without. I thought maybe we could wait 6 more months. I had a little bit of a conversation with Craig about it.
Other discussion? There a motion?
I'll move that we approve the Forecast 5 renewal.
Second?
Second.
Kim, we're ready to vote.
Online voting is open. Chris Lynch, I didn't get yours.
Voted yes.
Thank you. All votes have been cast, and the motion carries with Directors Deloach, Kirschling, Lynch, and Ressler voting yea, and Directors Liebig, Hemingway, and Rotland voting nay.
10?
Yeah, 10, I pulled to start a conversation, which we got into in Appendix 9, so I would move that we approve item 10 on the consent agenda.
Second.
Ready?
Oh, you're ready to vote, sorry.
It's all right. Online voting is open.
And
Chris, you're not registering again, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Yep. All votes have been cast, and the motion carries with Directors Liebig, Deloach, Rotland, Kirschling, Lynch, and Ressler voting yea, and Director Hemingway voting nay.
okay. I have 12.
Yes, on the round for Lemmy. I'd like just a little bit more explanation, and as far as we're having, in years past, we had parents and district staff do the installation, and now we're paying for the vast majority of our playground structures going in. Like an explanation as to why, and a little bit more explanation on this.
Well, there's a couple issues there. First of all, last year we put in place a playground policy, and there were a lot of schools in the district that didn't have the same means to purchase new equipment. Some that could, for example, Wickham 2 years ago went out and spent $100,000 on a playground that they raised, okay? But Wood could not, and we actually supplemented that. So we just in-house here with the other administrators, thought that the playground policy and making that part of Pebble life cycle replacement would be a prudent thing to do to ensure equity across the district. So we put together that playground policy, and you may remember we've got them spread out over the next 10, 15, 20 years. So we're following that. Lemmy is partially that, but also at Lemmy there's a deficiency in the pre-K, K playground, is that correct? So we're trying to correct that deficiency. There's a large student body there, and it needs to be done. So, and their playground's also kind of spread out, and from a supervisory point of view, the principal there wanted to kind of combine those a little bit so they can be monitored better. It's a site that can get away from you pretty quick. Anyway, so there's two answers. One is the playground policy, which the board put in place a year ago, and we're just following that, and that's we're trying to maintain that. And we're putting a budget amount, a limit on those projects every year, and then the PTOs can come back the subsequent years and raise additional funds and put in additional pieces of equipment if they choose to.
Dwayne, are you saying that the playground policy specifies that parents can't
No.
do the? Okay.
I'm not. I'm sorry if I didn't explain that correctly. The district's going to put a minimum amount into these playgrounds, but the parents.
Installation is what I'm
Yeah,
wondering.
We're talking about the
The
labor for
installation.
installation.
Can they do the labor for the installation?
Oh, we wouldn't recommend it. It's a safety issue. These things, we need to stand behind them and keep them safe, and I think it's a huge liability if we let parents install today's modern playgrounds.
And so what about the schools that have playgrounds that have been installed by parents?
Yeah, we can't correct what's been done. We can just, from this point forward, make sure that we do it properly. And we have 5 certified playground installers on our staff that can help with the installation and/or make sure that it's done properly.
And ADA compliance on a playground, is that contingent on the parent committee's desires, or do we have any type of policy as far as making sure that all of our playgrounds are ADA compliant, whether or not there's a student there that has a need or not?
As part of the playground policy, it's also one of the attachments you had earlier on Shimmick. You can pull that up if you choose, or you've got a copy of it. It states that we have to meet the minimum ADA guidelines. We've been exceeding that. And ADA guidelines are based on the number of, or types of play equipment, the number of, it's a bad example, but a swing, okay, or a slide that might be ADA compliant. You have to have a certain number of playground equipment that meets ADA guidelines. The playground companies, and that question was asked, how do we know if they're, giving us a straight story? Well, they're under national regulations to provide playgrounds that meet minimal ADA standards. So when they provide you a design, they've assured us, and that letter was an example of that, how they guarantee that we have a minimal number of pieces. And if you look on that sheet that we used earlier for Shimmick, there's a little box on there that says the minimal number is 5. This playground has provided 7 or 8 or 9 components that meet ADA accessibilities. So we exceeded that at Shimmick, and we intend to exceed minimums on every playground we build. But our policy requires that we meet the minimums.
And I noticed that originally when we were discussing the Shimmick playground, and this is off subject, but it was kind of looked at as 4 separate play structures, and now it's kind of looked at or referred to as one playground. Does that change about the number of ADA compliant features on a playground if you say it's 1 or if it's 4 separate?
Yeah, actually, at Shimmick, there's 2 primary play areas, and then there's some swings that might be added later. But I think each component, each playground component, like there's one on the left side, one on the right side, they both have to meet ADA compliance issues.
Okay, just to keep on topic and just to keep us moving, are you all ready to take a vote? Kim?
I think we need do we do a motion?
Do we do it? No, we need a motion. I'm sorry. Can we get a motion, please?
Motion to approve item 12 on the consent agenda.
Second, please.
Second.
Kim, we're ready to go.
Online voting is open.
I pushed yes.
All votes have been cast and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
And
Okay.
on
13 is it similar
13, the ground
questions?
has already been plowed, so I'll move that we approve item 13 from the consent
I might add
agenda.
one pertinent comment, that this is for a preschool playground that doesn't exist outside the new preschool room. So that's,
Say again, sorry, this is for what?
we're adding 2 preschool rooms there, so there's an area, we need to have preschool equipment, and that's what this is for.
Okay,
Can we get a second, please?
second.
Kim, ready to vote?
Online voting is open.
Yes.
Thank you. All votes have been cast, and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
Now we have agenda setting. I got kicked out. Can you do this?
Sure.
I don't have
So,
access.
2 things on the 9th. We got the board meeting and an exempt for the superintendent contract. You notice we didn't put a work session because I think we talked last work session, we're maybe getting back to where we can have one a month. That's up for debate. We can decide that, but, so the work session would be on the second meeting of the month.
And that still leaves us enough time to get that BASP thing discussed before we have to,
Yes.
okay.
So I think we would, Steve will add that to the second meeting work session. So if you look at the 9th, the agenda is relatively straightforward.
So just as a note of clarification on that, so the motion that I made was to change the date that we see it, but implied in that was that the date would change for when the BASPs would have to sign. So I assume that that will also be moved back past the work session? Yeah, okay, sorry.
Right.
Just wanted to make sure we're on the same page on that.
Just to make sure, so I got the work session the 23rd, on the board agenda on the 9th, so then we look for a signature thereafter.
And do you feel like that gives you enough time after what direction you might receive at the work session to do whatever you need to do with the draft contracts?
Well, it should give us 2 weeks. If we don't think we have enough time based on feedback at the work session, then we'll ask for an
I
adjustment.
think the intent of the motion was no sooner than the 9th, right?
Right.
I mean,
It would be later.
so if you're not, yeah, it can be later. So let's not get, I think the intent was let's not be time-driven, right? So,
Also, I just note, I know we're a little bit out of order here, but one of the things that Craig and I have discussed is that there'll need to be an exempt session on May 9th to talk property acquisition. I think we finally have the Scanlon Farms property squared away, so we are fairly confident, at least at this point in time, that we should be ready to go in terms of having a conversation about that.
I'm checking a technical question here then. We have 3 exempt sessions, superintendent contracts, and land acquisition. The land will be a closed session. Yeah. So I'm going to suggest that if we're doing that, let's do the board meeting and do those 3 after. I know sometimes we don't like to do that, but it looks like a short meeting, so why don't we do it after? And then we're not rushed, and then we can decide what order or whatever makes sense.
I have a question. I don't know if this is a board meeting discussion item or if this is a work session meeting, but I'd like to talk about the time frame of when we're getting things added to the board packet and what we would like to see as a board on moving things to the next agenda if we don't have them by a certain time frame. I'd just like to have a discussion around that topic so we're all on the same page. Is that a board meeting or work session?
I would suggest we do that work session. Let's do it on the 23rd. I think it's very fair.
Thank you.
You know, and we've had some of those conversations before, and maybe we just need to get back to basics. But yeah, let's do the 23rd.
Is the 23rd work session pretty full, or could we, and I haven't had a chance to talk with Matt about this, but start some discussions on the possible FFA curriculum and that type of stuff?
If there's 4 board members, sure. I think the only thing we had on that tentative agenda was the typical GO bond facilities master plan, right? I don't think we had any other.
We have a transportation committee update?
Okay. So we'll just have to look at the 23rd agenda, but let's add that.
Well, just, yeah.
Well, we can check
And
it
then, like I
next-
say, this is all contingent. We have not had a chance to get together yet, so.
We can check it next
We
meeting.
can see if we can get some feedback.
How full it looks or isn't, you know.
So, can I ask, since this Thursday is the open house at Transition Services Center to showcase the changes that are going on at Eastdale Plaza with our project, can I ask, I brought it up a couple times, that either on May 9th or perhaps even May 23rd during the board meeting, we have a short short presentation because Shannon's going to be retiring. Graduation is the next day, just to showcase.
There is a Transition Services Center update on May 23rd.
Okay, I didn't see that, I'm sorry.
Yep, it's the first item under teaching and learning.
Okay.
Well, we're not looking at the 23rd. but
Well,
yeah.
that's why I didn't see it. I'm not clairvoyant, thank you.
I knew we had it on.
Sorry
the
about
outline.
that.
Close, but
Steve, do we want to pull it up, or do you think 23rd is okay?
23rd would be great because the 24th is graduation in this room.
Okay,
We could do it either 23rd or the 9th.
let's stick with 23rd then.
Okay.
All right, anything else for the night?
Entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. We better move pretty quickly if we're going to do this session, so we're gonna start immediately in the back for our work session.